What made a mother-in-law absolutely hate their child's spouse? My daughter-in-law was a cheating addict who strung my son along through a whole pregnancy full of lies. The baby came out a few too many shades off to pass as my son's. She even tried to take my son to court for child support until her lawyer laid eyes on my son and told her to forget it. She stole and pawned a whole lot of my son's belongings along the way too. She never got clean, never got help, and has done this whole thing to yet another man since then. My grandmother hated my mother because my father was married once before and it doesn't count the second time. Basically, she preferred his ex to my mum because divorce. And I'm not making assumptions based on her behavior or things my mother said. She actually said that to me in those exact words many times, as she gave my half-siblings gifts, but not me. Grandpa snuck me gifts behind her back though, because he wasn't an awful person. She was clearly a horrible person, not an average mother-in-law who just dislikes her daughter-in-law. My parents did as much as they could to shelter me from it, but my mum suffered her treatment for 20 years before the universe finally saw fit to take Grandma down. As an adult, after our father died, I had to explain to my oldest half-brother why my father limited contact with his awesome grandma, who was apparently the nicest woman. She brought my half-brother a car. And why it wasn't just my mother being a gargantuan witch who can't get along with anyone. I'm a mother of 3 sons. One of them is married, and until very recently, I absolutely adored my daughter-in-law. She was the daughter I didn't have. They gave me the most amazing granddaughter. My daughter-in-law did, however, bring a level of drama to our lives that we were not accustomed to and that was hard to adjust to. Being a household of primarily males, there wasn't much drama before. The daughter-in-law was 9 years older than my son. They started dating when my son was 19. I was a bit concerned about the age difference, but I always treated her respectfully and with kindness. They're amidst divorce now, and I'm not thrilled with her behavior over the past 6 months. My reason is that she knew she was dating a very young man, and they knew when they decided to marry and have a child that the young man was still quite young. My daughter-in-law remained flummoxed that my son, who is 23 now, hasn't turned into a 30-year-old adult like she is. Some red flags did go off for me as I observed her own relationship with her mother. They were quite harsh with each other, but I tried not to let that affect my acceptance of her, and she became an integral part of our family. Nonetheless, she's treated my son poorly and I no longer like her. It's got absolutely nothing to do with competing with her, it has to do with how she's treating him and us. This potential mother-in-law is open to any potential daughter-in-law or same-sex partner any of my boys become involved with. I want my sons to have loving relationships in their lives, and I would never do anything to hinder whoever they choose to share their lives with. Not all mothers-in-law are horrible people. This may be one of the few answers straight from the horse's mouth, as it were, because I think a lot of the aggression the matriarchs in question feel might not be something they've come to terms with. A lot of them more likely have unconscious biases. However, I'd say that this mother-in-law did a good job of outlining the cause of her distaste in a way that doesn't seem unreasonable. Gold-digging harlot. My grandma hated my uncle's wife. I think it was pure jealousy. Grandma was a bit of a controlling type and hated being replaced. She treated my uncle like a child. Sadly, he died of cancer while still pretty young. Grandma tried to rewrite the obituary and managed to annoy my uncle's wife and children for a very long time. Then my mum hated my brother's first wife. There were plenty of good reasons. She was an addict, a liar, and a cheater, among other things. My mother-in-law didn't hate me, but she didn't love me either. She resented me and wanted to be the only woman in my husband's life. It was obvious that she would have felt like that about anyone. And I didn't like my son's first girlfriend. She seemed very disinterested in everything but herself and her phone. I didn't know her well or for long, but struggled to see what he liked about her beyond her looks. She was pretty. I was with a woman I thought would be my wife. We talked about it, looked at rings. She was Catholic and I'm not. Her mum hated my guts because I wasn't Catholic. Her mum would send her emails monthly saying, "He isn't Catholic. He's not rich and never will be. Find yourself a rich Catholic boy so you don't have to work," etc., etc. The mum got to the point where she spread rumors to my ex's friends about me. So now the mum and a bunch of her friends don't like me. She left me in January. I've barely spoken to her. I got in touch with her the other day and told her how badly I want her back. Turns out she got herself a wealthy Catholic boyfriend now. 3 years of being with her and being broken up for 4 months. I still dream about her every night, and she moved on a few weeks after the split. Feels bad, man. I know why my mum doesn't like my sister-in-law. She's unpleasant and mean. Every time we went to visit, she'd make sure there was at least one fight. With my brother, at least one yelling, drag-out fight. So now, every time we're trying to enjoy a visit, it's tense because we're waiting for the inevitable. Watching my nephew watch his parents scream at each other is the worst. My brother went from doing okay, having friends and a sense of humor and some crap, to now being overweight, unhappy, and having nothing to do on the weekends but drink and watch TV, which he then picks a fight about. He's so wrapped up in it, even when I try to get him alone for a while, it takes him a while to unwind. Otherwise, he puts me down so that he doesn't feel awful. It sucks. I used to be best friends with my brother, and Ma knows it too and hates her as much as she can. Mainly it's a pity because it's clear she's a miserable person. I love my daughters-in-law now, but at one time my eldest was very serious and talking marriage with a girl that no one I knew liked except him. That girl was really arrogant with no particularly good reason for being so. She didn't appear to like anyone else either. She was just very bad-natured. I was upset for my son, but also relieved when she broke it off. He had hit a bad patch and was out of work, so she started seeing someone else. Fun story time, my coworker and I both have terrible mother-in-laws. We always complained to each other because we got it, and it's hard to talk to your husband about it because they clearly love their parent and their parent treats them well. One day she turns to me and says, "I know I'm going to hate my future daughter-in-law because no matter who she is or what she does, she'll never be good enough for my baby." So my response was, "So basically you want to be your mother-in-law." Her eyes got really big and she was horrified that she would act the way our mother-in-law would without even knowing who he was possibly ever going to meet. He was in middle school at the time and years away from being that serious with anyone. I'm pretty sure that's the mentality of my own mother-in-law. I have a relative who hates their daughter-in-law because she wouldn't allow her husband to donate his bone marrow to save his brother-in-law who had leukemia. Her logic being, "One of your sons is already screwed up, why would you potentially want to screw up the second one?" My mother-in-law sees me as competition. She doesn't like that she doesn't have control of her son anymore and that he's allowed to make his own decisions. I don't play her games or feed into her narcissism, and she hates everyone unless she can benefit from them. So there's that. I'm curious if anyone will come and write here as a mother who dislikes her daughter-in-law and admit it for anything other than, "I knew she was trash, she cheated and broke his heart" kind of dislike. You know, a situation where she was clearly validated in the end. My mother-in-law would dig a grave and bury herself in it before consciously admitting, even to herself, that she didn't like me, and makes sure I know it at every chance. There's just such a cognitive dissonance in the way she thinks of herself and the way she truly is, and I bet that's quite common. My mother-in-law never liked me much. She didn't hate me, but I'm pretty sure she thought her son was better than me. Plus, to her, if you aren't blood, you aren't family. She had pictures all over her house of her other kids, of my husband, but not one single picture of me. I spent 20 years trying to get her to like me, and then suddenly I just didn't care anymore. I was pleasant, helped out when needed, but I just didn't give a rat's butt. It made everything much easier. The thing I'm proudest of is that my kids have no idea. She's dead now, and I've never said a bad word about her to them. They loved her, but at her funeral I was told to go in with the rest of her friends and well-wishers, and that I was excluded from the family-only part. Honestly, you win just for taking it with grace, and for being happy despite her preferential treatment. The funeral thing is a bit of a nasty final blow from beyond the grave, but I'd wager that people who saw that happen probably noticed and sympathized with you more afterwards. Victory through grace. Judging by other people's limited replies, I think I can offer something. However, it was a girlfriend of 2 years, not a wife, and she's an ex now, thankfully. They were 19 when they started dating. The biggest issue was a lack of maturity and low self-esteem. Typical young person control and jealousy stuff. It displayed itself in a list of behaviors, like slowly but surely starting disliking his friends and family, which led to many people being systematically removed from his life. Constant accusations of cheating when he was very devoted. He's a one-woman kind of guy. Sadly, she was a child in a woman's body. Pattern of the silly junior high romance with unwanted roughhousing, pinching, and tickling. This was done aggressively after being asked to stop. Expectations of him to join her repeatedly in activities she enjoyed but he disliked, while not willing to share in his interests. Then she'd quiz him on stuff to make sure he was paying attention and learning. Identifying tree species, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm walking in the woods when I don't want to. I forgot the names. Why does it matter? I'd rather be listening to records and playing board games." Which was an activity she hated because it included his friends, by the way. Also, her family had issues which she modeled, which included belittling his lifestyle and interests. Our family has issues too, but we all support one another's quirks and eccentricities. We don't require anyone to know our secret cuckoo handshake to join in on the circus. She'd use bedroom favors as a tool to distract him when he was wanting space from her. From what he said, she wasn't even that good at it. He's just my dumb little idiot. I love him, but my God. He was never allowed to do things on his own, or he'd get constant texts and calls, so he'd have to rush what he was doing, even if it was mowing his grandma's lawn. He couldn't even have lunch with me without having hell to pay for it later. She never complimented or appreciated him. Worked below part-time, as few hours as possible, and spent all of her money on girly stuff and expected him to pay all of the bills. She never did her half of the housework and whined when he was too tired or broke to take her out. Zero goals to improve herself, go to school, or look for a decent job. And she never wore makeup, like never, but started to at the end when she'd go out alone with her sister to bars. Never dressed up for him, like for real. Oh, and to be clear, the makeup isn't the issue here. The fact is, she was getting dolled up to go to the bars without him as their relationship was nearing the end, but never cared to doll herself up for him, ever, is the point. She collected pets and then neglected them, but expected him to take care of them. Also expected him to help her family with manual jobs around their houses. She had depression issues, and my whole family is a truckload of mental illnesses, so I don't mean the depression was a flaw of hers. However, even when given compassion and options to seek help, she refused to do anything about it. If someone's depressed enough to complain about it constantly, to the degree that it causes it in someone else around them, it's time to pop some happy pills or reconsider one's romantic suitability. There was a lot of subtle manipulation and goodness knows what other goofy crap she came up with at the time to play games or gauge his reactions. And for what it's worth, we as a family all gave a big effort to like her, get along with her, and treat her like family without judgment. We even paid for and took her on vacation with us. After they broke up and he was in his "screw that, I don't want a girlfriend" phase, he had tons of girls after him. He has a new girlfriend now. She isn't without her own issues, but she also has a lot of great qualities that more than make up for them. Nobody's perfect, especially my little man, but she makes him feel good about himself and she makes him laugh. She's a definite keeper. In short, his ex-girlfriend was a psycho witch. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My mother hates my wife of 9 years and always has. My wife is half Hispanic and has a son from a previous marriage, had a father who was an ex-con, and my mother feels that my wife was taking me from her. I'm the only child who lived near them. She would go as far to invite me and my wife's daughter to do things and not my wife and stepson. My father wasn't much better either. Needless to say that I had to cut ties with my parents. I'm much happier since then. My mum was hesitant at first because, oh no, 2 men, how am I going to get grandbabies? Shh, Mum, it's okay. You have 2 more sons, more chances with my siblings, but also none of us owe you grandbabies. She also seems to struggle with her perception of my partner's intelligence and anxiety. On the other hand, my partner's mother constantly whines about how I lack a real job. I'm physically disabled and autistic, making most typical entry-level jobs hell, if not impossible. I do the budgeting and whatnot. My partner is dyscalculic and learning disabled, which ties into my mum's issue regarding smarts. We aren't on benefits, and I aren't as well. She knows all of this, but that's not good enough, of course. We work really, really well together for the record, almost a brains and brawn sort of deal. Our strengths and weaknesses suit each other nicely. My mum hated my wife and I don't know why. My wife is beautiful, smart, kind, and has never done anything to my mum. I mean, frankly, my wife is way too good for me. She's always been nice and a great mum to her grandkids. I guess my mum has this way of making these kinds of backhanded comments. I never noticed it and kind of dismissed my wife about it for the first 5 years of our marriage. Then one day my mother admitted that she didn't like my wife and that was it. I haven't talked to my family in 2 years now, and it was the best decision I've ever made. Yep, this is why most of those mothers in these stories at least go to the effort of pretending to like their spouses, even if their faces and actions say otherwise. My mother-in-law is a fundamentalist Christian who pretends to like me, but I know that if I broke up with her son, she would be overjoyed. Over the past 10 years, she's said and done things to show her true colors. Myself and her ex-pastor son are atheists. His parents are relentless and creative in their tactics for us to return to the fold. She said some incredibly rude things about non-Christians. What she doesn't consider is this is one of the many reasons why we don't believe or participate. Okay, so I don't like fruit pies, big frickin' whoop. This became a huge deal to her. When we first started dating, she told my significant other that she's not like us. When he questioned her about it, she told him it was because I don't like pie. He basically rolled his eyes at her. Yeah, so for every birthday for 6 years, she'd bake me an apple pie. I'd politely choke down a piece and she'd stand smiling her frickin' face off and say, "Oh, right, you don't like pie. You shouldn't feel like you need to eat that for my benefit." My saving grace is that I'm a clean eater now, over 60 pounds down, and I don't eat sugar, meat, flour, stuff like that. This has created its own issue. I'm very appreciative when we're invited for a meal, even though I now have to bring my own food. She'll not stop putting marshmallows on the sweet potato, sugar in the peas, bacon fat in her salad dressing, heaps of butter and sour cream in the potatoes, and then complains to me that she can't seem to get to the same weight as me. She's got 30 plus years on me, and every time she sees me she asks my current weight, and when I tell her I don't know, she'll pout and grumble under her breath about it. Which, I work out every frickin' day and I basically just eat vegetables. This is not frickin' easy, and it's also not for anyone. I don't judge anyone for their weight, that's your crap to deal with. I have plenty of my own baggage I'm lugging around. She's actually grabbed my hips and jiggled me like a side of beef, trying to guess my weight. Don't get me wrong, I really do love and appreciate her and what she's done for us. I feel that she's made 0 attempts to get to know me. She basically knows where I work and where I live, and that's it. But she's never asked me about my life ever. She has no freaking clue that both my brothers are gay. Huh. My son should have chosen me. My mother-in-law hates me. She'll talk crap behind my back, but try to be nice as pie to my face. How do I know this? Because it's my husband she talks to. According to my mother-in-law, even though we all started out on council estates, because they bought their own home, I'm not the right class. Because I have a degree, I'm taking the mickey out of my husband's intelligence. Because I'm 7 years older than my husband, I've obviously brainwashed him into abandoning her. Because I don't make a ton of money, I'm a gold-digging harlot who only wants him for his money, despite him being depressed, jobless, and not wanting to be alive when I met him. And because I have tattoos, I've obviously got massive issues. My husband eventually got told that he should move back home with them, and as a sop, he could still be in a relationship with me. He told her that if she made me choose, she'd lose. She's been coldly civil to me since. So one of my sons got me to make an account quickly to give an actual perspective from a mother-in-law. For me, I don't like my other son's new wife because she's a lazy witch, to put it bluntly. They're both 26 now, and she doesn't lift a finger to help do any housework or laundry, and she seems to expect him to do everything for her, and it feels like he's a doormat to me in that respect, even though he probably doesn't see it that way. You go into their house and there'll be piles of dirty dishes just lying around unwashed, and it's disgusting. Relationships should mean shared responsibility, but she does not do her part. On top of that, it's like she treats our home like hers, and just makes herself at home around our pool and hot tub. She uses them more than we do, and we live here. The only good thing I have to say is she doesn't seem to be after him for money. We're a well-off family, and he's making more than 100k at 26, and should be making 500k by 35 or 40 at this rate. And she builds up more savings than he does, despite earning 4 times more. Honestly, I just wish she'd do more to help out. Even just offering would be nice, even if we don't need it, but as long as they're happy, I try to keep out of it. My mother doesn't like my brother's wife because said mother happens to be a narcissistic butthole who wanted him to pick her as the number one in his life. My mother-in-law hates my fiancé simply because he's a recovering smack addict. The fact that I'm one too seems to make no difference to her. What's more, his family is so lovely to me and it makes me really sad that he can't have the same experiences with my family. I'll admit that it could be intimidating to know that your offspring is attached to someone going through a struggle like that, but hate, as always, is the wrong way, man. I can't understand dragging down someone who's actively fighting to come out the other side of addiction. Do your best to help them or be welcoming so that they thrive. My in-laws didn't like me at first because we're different races and speak different languages. They came around when they saw how happy their son was and when I started learning their language. It's been several years now and I can't speak their language, but I understand a lot, so we get along okay. I can answer this question from the other side. I'm a daughter whose mother doesn't really like my husband. His personality doesn't jive with hers, which I could see at first because he can be a bit tightly strung, where she's really laid back, but I guess she won't admit that her daughter is also tightly strung and we're a great match. In addition, he didn't go to college, his family isn't as solid as ours, and his upbringing isn't as good. We also eloped, not in the pregnant teenager sense of the word, but we didn't have a wedding, which she seems to blame him for, and that kind of seals the deal on her dislike of my husband and opinion of my marriage. She doesn't really ask about him, and when I mention him, her answers are curt and seem bothered. We don't currently live in my home state, which I'm hoping to change very soon. As long as she doesn't make her unwarranted opinions known and is able on some level to fake it, we'll be fine. It's not ideal, but it's likely how it'll be. Her mind is made up about him, and the things she said about him or us before we married aren't things I'll ever fully heal from. She has a way, however, of subtly saying things without saying things, and if that's been going on with my family, we'll have to address it. My stepmother-in-law hates me because we have the same first, middle, and last names. My real mother-in-law died, but I felt like she was the only one to try to understand me.
Redditors who have been kidnapped. What was your experience like? Are there things you do now that you would have never done before? Serious replies only. My father, quote, kidnapped me when I was 7, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I lived with my alcoholic mother and her insane boyfriend. I wasn't abused physically, but looking back, the mental abuse and neglect was very traumatic. Some borderline child called it things. Anyways, my father had visitation rights and picked me up every other weekend. One weekend, he came to get me and saw that I had not eaten much. Food was almost always under lock and key, and my mom and her boyfriend were nowhere to be found. So, my father told me, pack your stuff. We spent some time hiding out at different places with family, friends, even hotels in Laughlin and Vegas. It was like a mini vacation. I even remember staying at my dad's girlfriend's house when the cops showed up. I hid under the bed while they talked to her. At the end of the day, I never had to go back to my mom's boyfriend's house, and my father won majority custody. I'm not sure how I would have turned out if I had stayed there. Thanks, Dad. When I was maybe 10 or 11, my neighbor kidnapped me. She was this single woman in her 50s who was always super nice to me. She was always on her porch, and she'd wave when I came home from school. Anyway, I was walking home from school and she was waving as usual, but this time she was beckoning me over. I went up to her porch and she asked me if I wanted some meatloaf she made. I freaking loved meatloaf, and she seemed harmless, so I said yes. I expected her to come outside with a plate or something, but instead, she called me in and told me to sit downstairs. I felt weird about it, but I followed her into her basement and sat down on a couch. She brought me a plate of meatloaf and I watched Pokemon 2000 on VHS. She had a freezer with those tube popsicle things too. After I ate, I told her I needed to go home, and she told me my parents called and asked her to keep me while they ran errands. I felt weird about it and suspected she was lying, but I just kind of went along with it. I remember I asked her if I could get my Game Boy at one point from my house, and she said my parents told me not to let me out of her sight. I remember watching Men in Black and falling asleep. When I woke up, I tried leaving, but the door was locked. She left some banana pudding for me on the table for when I woke up, so I just had that and went back to sleep. She opened the door at like 5 in the morning, woke me up, and asked me if I wanted to go home. She looked like she'd been crying. I told her yes, and she let me go. My parents asked me where I was, and I just told them I went home with a friend after school. I didn't have a cell phone, so it was pretty normal for me to just be gone for a day. I didn't see my neighbor on her porch the next Monday, so I knocked on her door. She came outside, and we talked on the porch about stuff. We never talked about that night, and she probably thought I didn't even realize what happened. She didn't say, but I think she had a kid who died a couple years prior and wanted to fill the gap. I never hated her for it or anything. Until I moved a couple years later, I would sit on her porch after school most days, and she listened to my neat facts about space. My sisters and I were kidnapped by our father repeatedly between the ages of 2 and 4. He would take us from our mother. She had brain damage and a serious drug problem, beat us if we made noise, and lock us in a closet and forget to feed us for days at a time. Each kidnapping lasted between 2 weeks and 6 months, depending on how long it took for my mother to realize we were gone and ask for help. He was a very scary man. He just wanted money from the state, food stamps, and welfare. He would also try to get money out of my maternal grandmother. In fact, she's the only reason the cops kept getting involved in trying to locate him. She had money and influence, and used it. I don't remember much because I was so young, but I remember being scared and in pain, and a uniformed cop opening a door and letting light in. I was terrified of being locked in the dark for years after, and sandy-haired men with mustaches still can make me very nervous. I'm 41 now. When I got divorced, my kids were almost the exact same age as my sisters and I were when the kidnapping started. It was a struggle to keep those old fears in check. I posted this on a different account I don't remember the password for. This is a long one, but it gets good. 2 years ago, I was very hungover on a summer Saturday in Manhattan. A girl I was seeing at the time was angrily getting her things together and proceeded to storm out of the apartment, which was shared by myself and 4 other guys. My old roommates had moved to a new apartment the night before. There are boxes and miscellaneous crap everywhere. I'm laying in bed, dying. It's around 9 or 10 a.m. About 5 minutes after the girl storms out, there's a knock at the door. She must have forgotten her phone charger or something. I get up in my boxers, walk across the living room where all the unpacked and half-packed crap is, and open up the door. Behind the door was one of the scariest faces I've ever seen. Very beady eyes, thick mustache, scarred up face, balding man in his 50s. I was holding the door slightly ajar. Since it wasn't who I thought it was, I stepped behind the door a bit to hide my pale body and stuck my head through the crack. He asked if Billy was home, one of my old roommates. I told him that Billy had moved out the day before. With that said, he put all of his body weight into the door, sending me flying back. This dude was enormous. As I was recovering from this and trying to think why someone would be so angry with Billy, this gentleman open hand slaps me so hard I hit the ground. I am now awake. My new house guest identifies himself as Big Tony and demands to speak with Billy. I go into my room, right off of the living room where Big Tony is now setting up shop, and put on pants and grab my phone. Tony has already made it very clear not to call the police or try to run out of my apartment, or I might fall out of the window or get shot in the knees. Apparently, Billy owes him a lot of money. I call Billy, who says he's never heard of Big Tony, and Billy is convinced it's a joke. Tony asks for the phone, where I hear Billy telling Big Tony to go screw himself and to get out of his old apartment. Tony is now upset and starts telling Billy that his roommate, myself, might get hurt if he doesn't learn some manners and come to the old apartment. Billy hangs up. Tony, for some reason, took a liking to me. He apologized for the slap, gave me cigarettes, and said he hoped that this would all work out. He constantly comments on the fact that I'm living like an animal since there's stuff all over the apartment, and asking if me and my old roomies watch betting sports. We never watched sports, never had cable. He asks if Billy's last name is something, which it isn't, then asks if Billy is from somewhere, that he isn't, and then asked if Billy is enrolled in a university, that he isn't. I inform Big Tony that I'm fairly confident he is in the wrong apartment. Just as I'm getting him to back off and believe that there might be more than one Billy living in an apartment building, there was another knock at the door. Quote, "If it's the cops or your parents, I'm the maintenance guy." My parents were coming to help me move out that afternoon. I open the door and it's Henry, another one of my old roommates. I inform him he's picked a bad time as he's already waltzing inside to get some things. Tony poses as my uncle for a few minutes before I intervene and tell Henry that this giant man is looking for Billy, who he believes owes him money. "Henry, do you guys gamble?" "Yeah, we gamble all the time." We play dice and cards a lot. I try explaining to Tony that we don't gamble on sports, but now we have to go through the whole gambit again. After another half hour of questions with Henry, Tony is back to believing he is in the wrong apartment. He calls his quote coworker to get a picture texted to him. It's not Billy. Okay. I tell Tony good luck and try to shoo him out of the apartment. No, it's never that easy. Tony wishes to take Henry and I out for coffee and donuts, his personal apology. I refuse. He won't have it. I'm in a Starbucks ordering donuts and coffee, which we consume in a nearby park, and listen to Tony's stories. Half an hour later, he says we can leave. At this point, it didn't seem like we were being kept though, and we head back. Naturally, no one believes us. We have a party in the old/pretty empty apartment. I stay at a friend's place in the building and wake up to knocks. Straight up nom flashbacks. It's my buddy Tom, who also lives in the building. He tells me someone's outside looking for me. Great. I get dressed and head outside to find Big Tony, who gives me a grocery bag filled with beer and cigarettes. Tom and a few other friends from the building come outside and we drink beer in styrofoam cups on the street whilst listening to Tony's stories. Everyone believes Henry and I, and if I'm ever in Tony's neighborhood, I should call him for dinner on him. TLDR, I got Big Lebowski'd. This happened a while ago when I was 6. I come from a third world country, and at the time, kidnappings were at an all-time high. We lived in a fairly nice neighborhood, no kidnappings there, no theft, great neighbors. We felt pretty safe, and therefore, my mom wasn't too worried. Our house was a gated residence, so we had a front yard and a backyard. I was out one morning in the front yard, playing with some toys while my mom was inside working or cooking or whatever. Someone knocked on the front gate. Me, being a dumb child, decided to go up and ask who it was. It was this fairly old man who asked for some water. Me, being the nice helping child, opened the door and was snatched immediately. I don't particularly remember what happened after that, but I woke up in a compound which I'm pretty sure was far from home. They hadn't done anything bad to me as far as I know, but they did try to feed me food that I didn't like. I was a picky child, and so all I ate was fruit. They had asked for ransom, which to this day, I don't know how much it was. They just kept me in a room all day with duct tape on my mouth and ropes around my feet and hands. They did take the duct tape off to let me drink water or eat food. Anyways, a few days later, the police busted them and arrested them. They ended up in jail for life is what I was told. Not too long after that, my parents decided to move to a different country and now all is well. I still think about what might have gone wrong if they had sold me into child slavery or something, fairly common in my country. Life resumed after that. I'm as happy as a 20-year-old can be. Nothing really changed. I still don't know why I was kidnapped, maybe for ransom or whatever. In exactly a month, it'll be my 14th kidnapping anniversary. Not much like the other stories here, but my ex-boyfriend abducted me from my parents' home when I was 19, threw me in the trunk of his car and drove off. About 8 hours later, a lot happened in between, including me getting out of the trunk and into the back seat. The police spotted his car and engaged in a high-speed pursuit. He crashed into a tree, served about 4 years, and is out with the wife and 3 kids now. It didn't affect me as much as people expected it to, and I haven't really changed anything in my life because of it. It happened in the past, and that's how I view it. My mother kidnapped me. My parents were in the middle of an ugly divorce and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. Since she depended on my father for money, she assumed she would lose me in the custody battle. My mother is a dual Canadian and American citizen. My father is American. So one day when my dad was at work, she didn't send me to school and took me from USA to Canada. There was nothing my dad could do because we weren't in the USA. It was several months before my mom decided to do the quote, right thing and go back to the States. By that time, my dad has lawyered up so well, she basically lost all rights to parenting me. This happened when I was 6 to 7. My mother ended up moving back to Canada to be with her family. If I could go back, I would have begged my mom not to return to the States. What the courts didn't care to hear was that my dad was a quote, functioning alcoholic. He was abusive in every way. When my parents divorced, my mom couldn't afford to live in the USA. So I was raised by my abusive father for another decade until I moved out at 17. He had me too terrified to tell anyone, just like my mom was. I'm now 28 and trying to build positive relationships with both my parents now that I've forgiven both of them. TLDR, mom kidnapped me and took me from USA to Canada. Several months later, mom felt guilty and returned me to the USA. So back when I was around 7 or 8, my family went to visit our home country of Pakistan. Anytime someone from the USA comes and visits Pakistan, it's kind of a big deal depending on where you're going. Where we visited was a small village of maybe 200 or so people, and so word gets out fast that, quote, rich Americans are coming. This makes us targets, as people believe we come with pockets full of treasures and gold and money. Anyways, I'm with my cousin, who at the time was also 8, at a sketchy arcade place. Sketchy because it only had like 3 games, and it was located in the back of a beat-up mini-store. So I'm playing, and my cousin tells me it's time to go, but I was so into the game that I didn't want to go. He leaves, and I stayed. As I'm playing, these 2 guys come into the arcade room and just start watching me play and start giving me comments on how good I was. And when I responded back in English, not the native language of Punjabi, so they knew I was an American. Next thing I know, they grab me by the hands and tell me to come with them. All I remember is crying while they drag me in the daylight in front of other people to some house. Once at the location, an old lady, who I assume was their mother, was frantic and asking who I am and why I was crying and why I was there. The guys told her to pretty much shut up and threw me into a room. I remember just standing at the door of the room and banging and crying for what seemed like hours, and every now and then they would tell me to shut up or they would hurt me, but I kept crying and banging. After what seemed like many hours, the woman/mom opened the door and told me to run home. I booked it so fast out of there, but I had no clue where I was. I just ran, and whenever I would see a kid or a woman, I would ask where the arcade was because I knew how to get home from there. Pakistan is notorious for what they do to little kids, especially young boys. Young boys are used for trafficking, and so, reflecting back on this incident, I would say I was one lucky kid, because God knows where I would be today. I met a man online who was around my parents' age. He pelted me with compliments and told me how pretty I was and everything a teenage girl wants to hear. I met him in secret every other weekend for 3 months. I would tell my parents I was staying at a friend's house, and then he and I would get a hotel room for the weekend. He started getting really controlling, bordering on physically abusive. so after a particularly harsh fight, I told him I didn't want to see him anymore. A few months later, he showed up at my job as I was leaving and told me he wanted me to come to his house, 2 hours away, so we could talk about stuff. I told him I had nothing to say to him and tried to leave. He told me he had recorded us in bed, and if I didn't go with him, he would make sure my parents, my siblings, and my boss got a copy of it. That we were just going to talk so he could explain why he acted the way he had. I was terrified of my parents finding out that I'd been lying and sleeping with a guy their age, so I went with him. He made me drive his car there, probably because we had to go through a toll booth with a camera and it would look less against my will if I was the one driving. We got to his house and he immediately turned violent. He shoved me into his room and locked the door. He ended up keeping me there for a week. During that time, he pretended to be my father and called in to work for me. He made me sign on to all of my accounts online, email, AIM, MySpace. He had a keylogger set up on his computer, so now he had all of my passwords. He took my phone the moment we got to his house. He wrote a quote, script, and had me call nearly everyone in my phone and tell them that I didn't want to be friends with them anymore and never to contact me again. One day, he took me for a drive to this park bordering a river and told me that was where he was going to bury me. That night, I started actively fighting back. Prior to that, I thought he was just going to let me go eventually. I kicked him in the testicles and hit him in the face, but that only made him mad, and he shoved me on the bed and knelt on my back with my hands behind my back while screaming at me and whacking me in the side of the head. He was so ticked off that night that he used my phone and called my dad around 6 in the morning and left him a voicemail saying, "You don't know where your daughter really is or what she's been up to, and you never will." My dad called my phone probably 20 to 30 times. The guy eventually was afraid he'd tell the police, so he had me answer and told me to tell my dad it was all a joke. He sat pretty much on top of me and told me if he caught me trying to tell him where I was, he would kill me. I told my dad my friends and I had been drinking and it was one of my friends' idea of a prank. When I was little, I had this friend who I would play with, but she always wanted me to spend the night and would pressure me into calling and asking my parents. My dad came up with a trick where he would ask me, "Are you going to watch wrestling tonight?" And if I said yes, it meant I wanted to stay. If I said no, it meant I wanted him to say I could not stay. At the end of our phone call, for the first time in probably 10 years, he asked, "Are you going to watch wrestling tonight?" And I said no. When we hung up, he called the police and called all of my friends that he could get a hold of. He eventually called the one friend who I had told about this guy, and he had all of his info, name, phone number, everything. Within 24 hours, I was safe at home, confessed everything to everyone, got a bunch of phone calls from friends who were confused and worried, and everything worked out. I never ever go anywhere without multiple people knowing where I'll be and who I'm with. I carry pepper spray and a self-defense weapon, and I never met another person online. I'm 31 now, and it's still something I think about more often than I'd like to. I was a victim of parental kidnapping as a child. It was terrifying because I knew the situation was wrong and I shouldn't have been with my mother, but even when I could put together words to say that, I was scolded because, no, that's your mother. Your mother can't kidnap you. It was one of many events that made me lose all faith in, quote, authority figures. Since it happened when I was young, I don't do anything different in my life as an adult, but I do get very annoyed when people complain about having to sign out their kid from daycare and facing any sort of hurdles when taking their kid out of school or daycare early. Familial kidnapping is real and can be as traumatizing, if not more so, than stranger kidnapping. I was lucky that mom just wanted her sympathy ticket. I was forced to march in front of a BOV, an armored personnel carrier, with 20 other people who had been rounded up by the VRS, the Army of the Republika Srpska. We marched in camp with them for 2 weeks and were used as human shields around vehicles and outposts. About 4 of us were shot, and 3 of us had died before I was taken to give stitches to some sort of officer who had a gash in his leg, and I was able to negotiate my release and the release of one woman who I had marched with, who was also able to pay. I wouldn't say I do things differently now, but it drained the life out of me completely at the time. Any desire I had before that to stay and ride the war out was totally gone. To this day, I have an extremely derisive attitude towards war and resent those who start them. Used to go running in my area when I was in high school. I've had older men offer me rides and follow me around, driving really slow back and forth past me, giving me the creeper eyes. I've even had women try and offer me into their car. One guy in a crappy rusty red van followed me for 20 minutes. I remember the look in his eyes, leaning back into his car, shirtless. I remember crossing the road several times and he kept making U-turns. I eventually faked crossing the road at one point and jumped a brick wall into this guy's yard. A huge dog came running out to meet me. I chose the dog versus the guy. The dog ran up to me to attack and simply licked me. An old dude came outside and I told him about it. I helped him work on his old Jaguar for hours before I felt safe to run home. Also, I'm a guy, and this was when I was 16 to 17 years old. I can't imagine how a woman may feel. I just got my concealed weapons permit and I'm working on getting my GF hers. Screw creepers. I am Peter Moore, the longest held hostage in Iraq, kept captive for over 2.5 years. In April of 2007, I accepted a 3-month posting in Iraq working for the American IT consulting firm Bearing Point. I arrived in Baghdad on the 2nd of April 2007, where my main job was to develop spending reports from the computer system used within the Ministry of Finance. On the 29th of May 2007, around 100 Iraqi police officers from the Ministry of Interior entered the building and took away myself and 4 British guards. For 6 months, I was moved around, meeting up with the British guards. In December of 2007, I was separated from the other Britons and was held with 2 Americans. In June of 2007, I was transported back to Baghdad, and this was the last time I had contact with any of the other hostages. In May of 2009, the number 2 commander of the militia, Laith al-Khazali, was released from U.S. custody in exchange for the bodies of 2 of the British guards. In September, over 100 militia were released in exchange for the body of one of the guards. On the 30th of December 2009, 946 days, or 2 years, 7 months, and 1 day, after I was captured, I was released in exchange for the militia leader Qais al-Khazali. The last of the hostages' bodies were eventually handed over in early 2012.
What's your in-laws from hell story? Husband took his own life. In-laws took me to court over insurance money. Most insurance policies don't pay out in the event of someone taking their own life. However, SGLI through the military will pay out in almost all circumstances. I'm doing well these days and I haven't heard from them in a few years. There was a lot of harassment before it actually made it in front of a judge. Forged signatures on beneficiary update forms that were magically found after his death and hadn't ever been filed. It was thrown out pretty quickly, but not before lots of headaches and money down the drain to a thankfully great attorney. Obviously, they were crazy before this, but it really was the cherry on top. His dad was obsessed with trying to catch us doing the deed, going so far as having his own key cut for our house. He had our keys one day when he was waiting in for a workman for us. He would just barge in at any time, never knocked on doors, tried to often barge into the bathroom when it was being used, also liked me to catch him pleasuring himself, would wait until he knew we were a few minutes away. We often called them to let them know we were nearly there, and then he'd whip it out and go to town and looked me dead in the eye when I caught him. Creepiest man alive. We changed the locks and reduced contact. When partner and I split, he called me several times to offer a shoulder to cry on. No, thank you. The in-laws have been going through a rough time financially for a while, and my wife and I have been paying their credit card and parent loan for a couple of years. Father-in-law's parents passed this year, and he gets a large but not massive inheritance, around $75,000. We keep paying the bills because father-in-law is still not working full-time and he puts the inheritance away, so mother-in-law, who is horribly irresponsible with the money, can't access it. We just arrived on Christmas Eve and there's a Lexus sitting in the garage, paid for in cash, and now father-in-law is talking about how he wants a Cadillac. I'm so teed off that I haven't been able to sleep, and I don't want to frick up the holidays, so I'm biting my tongue until we leave, but there is no way we're paying the bills anymore. $5 says they'll react with, "But we need it! How can you be so selfish?" Don't cave. Remember how much that car cost. Remember they were saying in front of you, payer of their fricking bills, that they want a Cadillac. There's an important saying that one should never ascribe to malice what can be explained by stupidity, and I think that probably applies here. Hopefully they saw reason and accepted the solution with grace. My mother wore all black to our wedding, complete with a black hat with a hanging black mesh to cover her face like she was in mourning. This made me laugh. So melodramatic. Does she always act like this? I'm low-key in love with passive-aggressive antics from family. My entire extended family is so melodramatic, I'm running out of popcorn. After driving almost 11 hours with husband to see in-laws, mother-in-law accused me of keeping her son away from her, and how I'm not ever going to let her see her son again, to my face, and started crying in front of multiple adults and children. The next day, when I asked to speak with her to let her know that what she did was a little unreasonable and very hurtful to me, she showed her true colors and went from crying victim to screaming viciously at me and trying to hit me. She screamed me and husband, her son, out of the house and threw the gifts we had bought her out of the door like pieces of trash. I cannot believe this is the woman who gave birth to my husband. She's like she's from another species. She sounds slightly mentally unstable. Oh, she just sounds very manipulative, playing the victim for the audience and getting mad when she realizes she's not getting what she wants. My mother-in-law said we could have the wedding at the place she works, for free, otherwise the venue would cost upwards of $7,000 just to rent out. She decided that gave her free license to plan everything to her specifications, including the date, what we would eat, the flowers, what we would drink, and even what music I'd have at my wedding. She invited more people to the wedding than me and my husband combined. To top it off, she refused to watch my husband's son on our wedding night, saying that he would feel rejected if he wasn't allowed to stay with us. Each thing happened by itself, and it wasn't until they all added up that I realized my wedding had been hijacked under the guise of, "That's how it needs to be if you're going to have it at my place of work," which was bullcrap. She just wanted to control everything. My husband called her out on it later, and she's reduced her meddling to almost zero now. Thank goodness. This happened to me exactly. She always used to ask, I'm divorced now, why we didn't have wedding photos displayed. Because I hated being reminded of that day never seemed like a very nice response. My soon-to-be mother-in-law devoted an inordinate amount of time petitioning the state to allow her son to be remanded into her custody for a day to attend my wedding. He was in jail awaiting trial for fighting a cop and nurse after getting picked up for drunk and disorderly. He was denied bail because he was currently on probation from previous alcohol-fueled shenanigans, theft and assault, and was looking at a nickel once he finally got a court date. She wouldn't listen to my wife and I when we asked her to stop, so we had to write our own letter to the Department of Corrections letting them know we would have an open bar at the reception and it would be a really bad idea if my brother-in-law was in attendance. We showed him pictures and videos 4 years later when he got out, the first time. Fun fact, my brother-in-law is the reason I'm on first-name basis with the local sheriffs in his hometown, as for the first 3 years I dated his sister, there wasn't a family function that he, the brother-in-law, attended where they didn't get called out. Out of curiosity, how's the brother-in-law doing now? Today he's walking around on parole as a convicted felon, carrying the balance of a 20-year sentence over his head, and someone is waiting for him to break parole. The problem is that he's definitely got a Jekyll and Hyde thing going on. When he's sober, he's one of the kindest, most generous, and most noble human beings you'll ever meet. But as soon as he starts drinking, it's all downhill from there. One of the first times I ever met him, he literally, as in took it off and handed it to me, gave me the shirt off his back so that I could make a good impression on their grandparents. He then proceeded to get so drunk that emergency services had to be called, which set the tone for the next 15 years of our brother's by-marriage relationship. I care deeply for the guy and do what I can to help him and his kids, but he doesn't have my home address for a reason. To answer the original question, he's getting his next 30-day chip next week, and we're all really proud of him. Again, I personally am hoping he sticks with it this time. This isn't as out there as some of the overtly rude in-laws, but mine were so utterly self-absorbed, insular, and lacking in social skills that I was literally ignored throughout most of my early encounters with them. They had a family culture which they all buy into, in which my father-in-law is the center of everything. The only family pictures in the house were of him, none of the 3 kids, all food was prepared to his tastes, and he had no concept of other people's needs or feelings. Initially, I felt utterly rejected and disapproved of, because who goes to dinner again and again with people and is never asked one question, not even, "How are you?" It took me a long time to realize that they just had no idea how to interact with other people because they lived in this complete bubble. To this day, my father-in-law treats every conversation as an opportunity to change the topic to himself, no matter how outside of his experience it is. But I realize that they never cared enough about me to bother to disapprove of me. That being said, my father-in-law's levels of narcissism are so great that he sees slights and digs at him in a lot of my Facebook posts and unfriends me because he couldn't bear the idea that I wasn't considering his feelings with every thought I shared, as he's so accustomed to everyone catering to his needs all the time. I'm sure I was supposed to be wounded to have no longer been in his good graces, but I just laughed. I think he is genuinely and cluelessly taken aback when he's not considered the most important and greatest person in the room. My mother-in-law refers to all of her daughters-in-law as son's first wife. She gave me used stationery for Christmas. Want more? She wore a white dress to my brother-in-law's wedding rehearsal dinner and interrupted, then stopped the best man's toast so that the soup wouldn't get cold. She told me that I'm a horrible mother for not sending my kids outside to play unsupervised all summer, like she did in the 70s where mums would kick the kids out, lock the doors, and tell kids not to come home until dinner. I nearly died after having my first child, and she told me that God was telling me I'm not fit to be a mum of more kids. After we had our second, she told me that I had my hands full and had no business having a third. After my third child, she told me I had too many children for anyone to ever want to babysit. By the way, she has 3 kids. I keep a very clean house, but I have 3 young boys. They're messy. Before brother-in-law and sister-in-law came to visit one time, she sent a cleaning crew ahead to clean my house so that it would be up to their standards. He's the golden child. Father-in-law lives with us 6 months a year while he collects butterflies for his book. He pays no rent and runs up our utility bills with no thought about it. When we ask him to clean up after himself, he says he didn't realize he'd made such a mess, but thought it was my job as an at-home mum to clean up after the men. He's not invited back for 2016. When she comes to our house to see the kids, I regularly tell her not to get involved in our laundry. She always ignores me, goes through our closets, rifles through our stuff, and then makes comments about what she finds. To be clear, my husband always stands up to her. I was the one who constantly tried to repair their relationship. I finally gave that up last year. We're now essentially no contact with them, and they are not allowed in our house. To talk to the kids on the phone without us supervising, and phone calls are only on holidays. And now, after reading this, the narrator has decided to thoroughly stalk and vet individuals before any deepening of relationship going forward. Who would want a monster like this in their life? Where do I start? My mother-in-law and my grandmother-in-law are both weird about food. A few years ago, Grandma left a turkey to defrost on the counter for 4 days. My sister-in-law came over, almost fell down due to the smell. Grandma said the turkey needed to be at room temperature for the enzymes to develop. My sister-in-law had to bag it, toss it, and scrub down the kitchen to make it fit for humans again. My mother-in-law had a big dinner one year. Rather than use paper plates, she used real ones. She had about 50 people or so. We didn't go, but about a week later or so, we were over. There was lots of snow on the ground, and my dogs were out in the yard. One of them kept going over to a snowdrift and digging and digging. We went to see what was up. The plates were all buried in the snow. Rather than run them a bunch at a time through the dishwasher, she left them outside and they were covered by snow. So, service for 50 people, filthy, left outside for a week. No wonder my dog wouldn't leave that snowdrift alone. Nothing says loving like week-old roast beef stuck to a plate in the snowdrift. Last one for now, Grandma was supposed to get a bottle of pickled peppers yesterday, as part of her Christmas gift. In the general chaos of kids and everything, the bottle, still wrapped, broke. It was all mopped up and tossed. We told her, sorry, we'll get you another one. Her response, why did you throw it away? We told her it was broken and the glass was all over the food. She told us we could have washed off the peppers and still eaten them. We told her, no, you'd die, and she refused to believe that. And this is why I never, ever, ever, ever eat anything these people cook. Not ever, not at all. So much to tell, but I'll just say that every once in a while, me and my wife have had to deal with a wellness check from the police because her parents call and tell the police they haven't heard from their daughter in weeks, even though they talked to her the other day. And they also say I'm one of those people who would chop my wife into pieces. Luckily, my step-uncle is a lieutenant in the sheriff's office, and the last time they got a call from the chief telling them to stop. I state I wanted to host Thanksgiving, and I invite all the family. Mother-in-law then invites everyone to her house and not us. Found out when I started calling sisters to firm up plans the week before. Also, the only family member not invited to a niece's baby shower. So done caring after 36 years of being the last invited or not being invited at all. Of course, we always get invited to the work parties. Okay, so my mother-in-law at the time of the story was about 350 pounds. She chain-smoked these terrible all-black cigarettes that were longer and thinner than normal cigarettes, and smelled like death, and she would only wear polyester muumuus that she bought in the 70s. Her voice sounded exactly like Roz from Monsters, Inc., and the only things she would talk about were how hard it was to find a new muumuu, or how her channeling was going, and what the various spirits had to say. The first time I met my mother-in-law, she sat me down and started talking to me about the energies that spoke to her from the Pleiades. As she was telling me about how they were going to fix the world, I realized that to her the Pleiades was one place, a bunch of space lights that were all very close to each other, because they're close together from our point of view. When I, in my naivete, tried to explain to her that the stars that make up the constellation are in fact an enormous distance apart, and some of them don't exist anymore, she just scowled at me, shook her head and said, "No," and kept talking. Later that night, my wife and I were awoken by a huge commotion and we found her drunkenly destroying the kitchen. When we asked her what she was doing, she said, "The energies need a burrito." so he made her a burrito and sent her to bed. In conclusion, my mother-in-law is an insane, drunken chain smoker who only wears polyester muumuus and channels the spirits of the aliens who live in the Pleiades, who want a burrito. At my wedding, after the ceremony, our new mother-in-law started yelling at my husband because he made a joke to his father. She then proceeded to storm off, dragging his sisters with her. After about 5 minutes, her F-buddy of the week stomped over and just started going off on my husband for being disrespectful. I was almost certain my reception was going to turn into a brawl. 3 years later, she still hasn't apologized. Oh, where can I start? Gave my 7-month-year-old a scale for her first Christmas so she wouldn't get fat like me. Told my husband that he wasn't allowed to get a vasectomy because he might want kids with his next wife. Told me I was gross and that she didn't know why her son would want to come home to me. The night our daughter was born, she berated my husband for giving our daughter the ugliest name she had ever heard, my grandmother's name and his grandmother's name. Told my mother my name was ridiculous and ugly. This year she cancelled Thanksgiving and Christmas to try and teach us some weird lesson. It was fabulous. I could honestly go on, but she is just a bitter old lady. Called me by the ex-wife's name for a couple of years, and it wasn't as if hubby's first marriage even lasted a year. During visits, if I admired anything in her home, I was told, "You can't have it." I wasn't allowed to do chores to help out. She even took my husband's pants out of my hands when I was doing laundry and pre-treated them with Tilex. Ruined them, but I was to blame for rushing her. If I brought presents for her, I was extravagant. If I did not, I was cheap. If I asked about the family, I was a busybody. If I didn't know the details, I was uncaring. My cooking was all wrong, i.e. healthier than hot brown, overcooked, fatty, salt-laden mystery foods. My best Christmas present from her was an acrylic angel with the wrong birthstone from the dollar clearance bin. She kept giving me angel stuff, and I'm not even remotely religious. If I made suggestions, I was greedy and critical. We now live far away and no time or money to go visit. Sorry. My in-laws weren't terribly interested in me until I got pregnant. Suddenly, they were all about being in my business. They flooded us with unwanted advice and terrifying stories. I stopped giving my sons formula at 3 months because it was too expensive and they're fine. Or when told that the hospital checks our car seat before release, I remember bringing our oldest home from the hospital in my lap and he's fine. Mind you, I'm the same age as their oldest, car seats existed, and people like them are probably the reason the hospitals check now. Anyway, this escalated to invading personal space, which included talking to and kissing my belly, even before I had a bump. No matter how many times we told them not to do it, my mother-in-law would swoop in like a ninja when I least expected it. Come wintertime, I had a good-sized baby bump and a maternity coat to cover it. We were leaving the in-laws' house and I already had my coat zipped up, smugly thinking I'd found a way to defend myself. Much to my horror, she starts pawing at the bottom of my jacket and attempts to yank it up. When that doesn't work, she bends over and tries to kiss below the coat, completely misses the bump, and plants one right on the front of my pelvis. I'm frozen, going, "Your mother just kissed my VV," over and over. My husband says, "What the frick, ma?" She just shrugs, says she doesn't care, and walks away. 0 fricks given. Later, my husband negotiated that she just blows kisses from that point forward. Otherwise, I refused to see them. In conclusion, my mother-in-law tried to kiss my baby bump and instead planted one on my hoo-ha. I will note that I've tried to spread out the various charges against different kinds of in-laws, but upwards of 90% of these stories have been mothers-in-law. They just seem to be the most likely kind of crazy to get up in their children's spouse's business, I suppose. Cousins-in-law came to Thanksgiving the day after we buried my grandmother. They ignore her husband of 58 years who's sitting at the table, don't offer any condolences to any family members, and complain when we dedicate the goats to grandma, and not their 4th child with the 3rd husband. Also called me ignorant for not knowing who the American Idol winner was this year. The only saving grace here is that my wife knows how crazy her mum is and has gone no contact with her. Here are some things that happened in no particular order. The big one, father-in-law, who's a pretty good guy, has MS and is basically bedridden. Mother-in-law has been consistently misdosing him on his medication, including giving him sedatives that she's gotten from somewhere. Her adult daughter and her husband moved in to help renovate the house to something that's more handicap accessible for my father-in-law. They spent nearly $20,000 in renovations, remodel and redecoration, along with new appliances for the kitchen. Without warning, my mother-in-law served them with an eviction notice, giving them 3 days to vacate. They live about 2 hours away. In the past 10 years, she's made 2 trips to actually see my daughter. There have been 3 or 4 more trips for things like going to garage sales, where she's made an hour or so visit as part of the trip. For my first Christmas with the extended family, she forgot to buy me a gift, so she went to the freezer and got me a summer sausage that had been in there for nearly 4 years. Nothing says welcome to the family like a ruined, frozen, smoked meat. For another Christmas, I got a giant bottle of Listerine and some toothbrushes. Mother-in-law works at the dentist office and liberated these gifts for me. She saved a ham in the refrigerator to make ham and potato soup. The ham had been in the fridge, not the freezer, for nearly 3 months, and she was still going to use it for the soup. Mother-in-law is making tons of money in land royalties from fracking. Sister-in-law recently saw a royalty check from the oil company and it was over $900,000. Yet mother-in-law won't spend any of that money to refurbish the house or pay someone to provide the kind of care that my father-in-law needs. She's all kinds of fricked up. Not technically my mother-in-law yet, but told me her daughter wasn't ready for a ring after we'd already picked it out and she was asking me when she was going to get it. A few months later, she was contemplating a cross-country move and said to my face if she left, there was no one here that her daughter would stay for. First words to her daughter when she told her of our pregnancy were, "How could you be so stupid? My fiancé is 30, we're doing well, live in the same place, and are due in August. Cut the cord with the mother-in-law." To clarify a bit, my husband was 12 to 16 and watched her alcoholic dad beat her mum. Her mum would in turn get in bed with her or sleep in her room to ride it out for the night. At 18, they divorced, and she went 5 years and received her master's. Came home and has been living with mum since. There is a bond, albeit unhealthy, that neither wants to break. Her mum is lonely, clinically depressed, and suffers from severe anxiety disorder. I've given her every option to slowly get away, which she seems to have no intention of doing. Our relationship is suffering, and I'm not really sure where it's heading. What I do know is that no matter the outcome, I will be the best father to my child that I can be. Actually building the baby's crib today. My in-laws came from a very, very rich family. They're rich enough to take a helicopter ride to another city in order to avoid traffic congestion. This one year, they told us to wait for them before starting dinner because they would like to join us. They promised to arrive at 7 p.m. They finally arrived at 9:15 p.m. 15 minutes later, they left, sister-in-law saying she wasn't feeling well and would like to return to their hotel to rest. We waited more than 2 hours for a 15-minute appearance act. Everyone was teed off. Oh boy, my time to shine. This will be a series of short stories. A little background. First, I'm Mexican-American and my wife is white. Also, her parents are divorced. 1. After she met me, her mother took my then-girlfriend into the kitchen and said she was dating below her. 2. After he first met me, my father was asked by his family what I was like. He only said, "He's a wetback." 3. Since I have now graduated from college, law school, passed the bar exam, and become a practicing attorney, my mother-in-law constantly belittles my wife. Most recently, during dinner, she stated that my wife has lowered her prestige in light of my accomplishments despite my race. 4. When my mother-in-law and her husband visited us for the first time after we got married, we found them in our bedroom uninvited and they were searching for something on our bed. We finally heard their hushed tones and realized they were looking for stains on the sheets. 5. The mother-in-law wanted us to all go to a small town in Alabama to see her family for Thanksgiving. So we went, me a little anxious about what to expect. It was a very awkward experience. I think I might have been the first Mexican they'd ever seen, and then we had Thanksgiving dinner. A relative started describing this program the city initiated, where people can provide aluminium cans in lieu of payment for bus fare. Mother-in-law's husband says, "Beer cans too? Y'all are going to be seeing a ton of Mexicans on the buses." Everyone fell on the floor laughing. My wife and I could only stare at each other in disbelief. 6. This Thanksgiving, mother-in-law and husband invited their contractor to dinner. He's from Colombia and has no family here, so I thought they were being friendly. When he arrived, husband kept trying to get us to speak Spanish to each other because us, being Spanish speakers, we would basically be family. When introducing him, mother-in-law said, "He's from Colombia, but we don't call him a terrorist," and started laughing.
Babysitters of Reddit. What were the weirdest rules parents asked you to follow? I was told that the only thing she specifically wasn't allowed to do was eat a bowl of sugar. I mean, babysitter or not, this is just good advice. I wouldn't want to be the person consuming 150% daily value of the sugar intake. I had to change the kid's cloth diaper every 2 hours on the dot. The kid was 6. I assumed it was for some sort of disability or something, but no. His parents just didn't want to potty train him, and the kid was content with being babied. I remember just making the kid put his own diaper on and encouraged him to use the bathroom if he had to go. I never went back. I had to put the kids to sleep with the CD player going. That wasn't the weird part. It was a recording of their parents basically going, "Molly, "You are wonderful. You are a star. You're going to shine bright." That isn't super weird, but it was like several hours long, and apparently they listened to it every night. Yes, I have someone watching my turtle while I'm on vacation over Christmas. As a joke, I printed out the daily affirmations, "You are the best turtle," "Your turtle shell brings all the boys to the yard," etc., and said she has to read them to Tammy every day. My friend did not find me funny. No hot sauce after 9 p.m. To give some context, the kid loved hot sauce, but his folks were super overprotective. Maybe they had heard of people eating too much hot sauce and throwing up as it would not settle? Honestly, the kid was made of solid steel. We went to Taco Bell pretty much every time I babysat. My mom told me a story of when she had to babysit during her teenage years. She did it for this religious family whose church did not believe in television or their members watching it. She would bring a portable TV with her to watch once the kids were asleep. The parents came home and they were captivated by it. They would invite her over just so they could watch television. Not necessarily a rule, but the first time I went to their house, they told me about their daughter's very serious peanut allergy. Walked me through the EpiPen, prevention, phone numbers of their neighbors who were doctors. All fine so far. I took this very seriously. But then the mother put her hands on my shoulders and said, "If she dies, we wouldn't blame you. It wouldn't be your fault." While I appreciate the thought, this freaked me out and I was 100 times less comfortable. This has the same energy as going up to someone and just saying, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault," over and over, to the point where it seems less like a reassurance and more of driving them crazy. Asked me to drive their 3-year-old twins around in my personal vehicle for 2.5 hours because, quote, "that's the only way they can nap." No. I simply put the kids in their beds, closed the door, and they were asleep in 15 minutes. Not a rule, but a single mom once told me to use the bat by the door in the event the kid's father comes by and tries to take them. That was pretty weird and uncomfortable. Hippie family. The 2-year-old had no bedtime and no rules. Quote, "She can eat what she wants, no bedtime, and if she falls asleep, leave her wherever she crashed." The parents came home at 2:30 to a toddler eating chocolate cake on the couch with their preferred American pickers on TV. That's fine, apparently. 6 months later, the mom is very pregnant and asks that when the baby is born, if I could wrangle the toddler while the mom gives birth in a bathtub at home. The 2-year-old was to be in the room watching while I explain what's happening. I left that evening when the parents came home, fried chicken in the toddler's hand, keeping up with the Kardashians on TV, and denied their next request to come sit. As a 20-year-old, I wasn't prepared to see the mess of someone else's home birth. Lady, I'm a babysitter, not an RN. Ask someone else. I used to babysit for this family when I was in high school, in the 80s, and they had no books or reading material of any kind, except that there would usually be like 2 sections of the Wall Street Journal and a running magazine lying around. No books. Anyway, once I went over there and the mom told me like 9 times, begged me not to eat the box of Nilla wafers that was in the cupboard because she needed them for a recipe the next day. Begged. I was like, okay, got it. They're totally safe because I don't even like vanilla wafers. She kept mentioning it, and it was the first thing she asked about when they got home. Can't believe it, this woman got the Nilla wafers. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the family gave me instructions to let their kids drink chocolate milk, which they were otherwise not allowed to have. I think they wanted their kids to associate babysitter time with fun time, so the parents could go out more often. Seemed to work out well for them. The kids both grew up to be successful people. To give him warm milk in a baby bottle right after every dinner. He was a fully functional 10-year-old boy. Edit, to answer some of the questions, yes, he was fine with it. His parents were otherwise normal, as far as I saw. The kid himself was great. His teeth seemed fine from what I could remember. Not that I really would have paid attention to that back then, but I just found him on Facebook, and it looks like he did have braces around 14 to 15 years old. If Brady stands by the door, it just means he needs to go out, open the door, and let him back inside in a few minutes. Brady was a 4-year-old boy. OP, are you sure? Are you really sure that you weren't dog-sitting at the time? That might have actually been my mom and little brother. When my brother was 3 to 4, he was learning to pee like a big boy in the big boy potty. Well, Mom turned away for a second to do something, and my brother must have nudged the toilet lid or something because it came down and smooshed his boy parts. He was terrified of the toilet for a year. He told everyone that, quote, "Potty busy," and he refused to use anything resembling a toilet that year. Mom didn't want him to regress back to diapers, so she let him pee off the back porch and convinced him to poop in a little kid's training potty. He refused to pee in it, though. I'm sure anyone that babysat us during that time was confused and concerned. If you like what you're hearing, remember to hit subscribe and check out Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. Thanks for watching! The mom had me put her kids in their car seats and sit in the driveway with all the car doors open while she just hung out inside the house. 5 hours of me standing in the driveway watching them sit inside their car. Never returned. Edit, I meant to say I never returned to babysit for her again, not that the mother mysteriously disappeared. As for people asking why I didn't take them somewhere, she specifically asked me to just sit in the driveway with them. I also didn't have my driver's license yet, so I couldn't have taken them anywhere, even if I wanted to. The kids were twins who were 4 years old, I think. They were weirdly well behaved and didn't complain about what we were doing. To this day, I have no idea what she was doing inside or why she didn't just let them play in the yard. I am just as confused as you. Oh my god, thanks for asking because you reminded me of a weird thing. The 3-year-old daughter had to watch this VHS tape of a live Fleetwood Mac concert before bed. I was like, okay, cute. That's adorable. 3-year-olds love the weirdest things. She's so quirky, and this'll be fun. But she didn't love it. She always wanted to watch Land Before Time instead, but it was always on the note left for me. Like, pager number, pediatrician, chicken soup for dinner is in the fridge, and watch Fleetwood Mac at 6:30 before bed. Obviously, the family eventually found out I wasn't making her watch it, as I had no freaking reason to believe it was a secret. They were clearly upset by this, and I was never called back to babysit. So that was weird. Wasn't a rule, but on my first day, they sent over an adult male friend of theirs who asked to come in. I said no, and was then told I was being tested and I had passed. This reminds me of the time my dad called our house phone when I was 8 or 9. My parents had gone to the movies and my 15-year-old sister was in charge of watching my brother and I. He called the house and I picked up, and he said in a weird voice, "Hey little girl, is your mommy or daddy home?" And I told him, "No, they went to the movies." And he said, "Oh, okay, well, I'm a friend of your dad's and he wanted me to drop something off, but I don't have your address. Will you give it to me?" And I started to spit our address out like it was nothing. And in the middle of me saying the street we lived in, my dad yelled, "No, that's so, Caitlin. No, you never ever give out your address to anyone on the phone if you don't know them." He had called to see how things were going and just figured he'd see what I would do if he pretended to be a stranger asking where I lived. So anyways, I failed his test, but learned a great lesson. When I was about 14, some friends of my parents asked me to babysit their 9 or 10-year-old son who wanted a boy babysitter. When I got to their house, the mom told me that her son loved poached eggs and asked me to make him a poached egg on toast for dinner. She quickly explained to me how to make it as if it were something really simple and easy. Later that night, after wasting half of their eggs in a hopeless effort to make a poached egg, I asked the kid if he liked scrambled eggs. He said he loved scrambled eggs and ate them without complaint. When the parents came home, I apologized for using up their eggs. They laughed and seemed to appreciate the effort, although the mom explained it again and insisted that it was really simple. I'm almost 40 now, and I still suck at making poached eggs. And it cracks me up that the mom thought a 14-year-old should be able to whip one up based on a few instructions. On the other hand, as a parent, I appreciate the heck out of that kid. Edit. Wow, I love that this has brought out so many good egg poaching tips. Now I need suggestions for hollandaise. Immersion blender. Immersion blender solves everything. Only 2 hours of reading time. To be fair, the mom was a librarian and her 2 kids were adorably nerdy. They had an entire room filled with books, and even then we'd make trips to the library from time to time. The rest of the time was supposed to be outside or doing some activity. It was a super sweet deal too, because she paid not only for her kids to have a pool pass, but me as well. So we basically went every day all summer, and we would play in the pool. One had me feed her 1-year-old only from a freshly opened baby food container. If she only ate 2 or 3 spoonfuls, I was to throw it away, and when she wanted more in 15 minutes, I was to open a new one. I thought it was so she would finish her meal and be full for a while, but she said it was okay to feed her every time she wanted it. I would probably throw away 5 or 6 jars in a 2-hour sitting. They cost more than I usually made for sitting. Time for a babysitter horror story. Babysat for a woman who knew my mom. She had 2 kids, both acted like feral animals, kicked and bit me very hard when I told them no. She had her TV behind a plexiglass thing because they keep breaking TVs. She had locks on the outside of the bedroom door and crib set up that essentially locked the younger kid, 3 or 4 years old, into her crib. It had a top that you pulled down and padlocked the sides. It was absolutely horrific. The kids screamed bloody murder when I tried to get them to listen. Their grandma who lived next door came over. Did she come over to help me out? No, she gave these kids cookies and crap-talked me for not being able to control them. Like it's my fault that her grandkids act like animals and not the fact that their mother apparently treats them like animals and she herself gives them treats when they have temper tantrums instead of putting them in timeout like a normal person. Their mom promised to be back by 9, important because I was in high school. She wasn't back until 2 a.m. and that was after I started calling all the bars to find her. I was planning to eat dinner afterwards, so I was starving. I called my mom and she ordered delivery for me. The grandmother got angry that she didn't order enough for the kids too and guilted me into sharing it. The mom finally came home, paid me $10 for 10 hours of babysitting, even though we agreed on $20 for 5 hours, and she proceeded to crap talk me next time she went out, saying I was lazy and a bad babysitter. She said I should have beat their butts and locked them in the bedroom when they started acting up. Edit. My mom and I contacted Child Protective Services afterwards a few times. Unfortunately, nothing came of it. Where I live, they give people 24 hours notice before inspecting a house, so I'm sure she was able to hide whatever, or they just gave her a warning, I don't know. I never babysat there again. Not a babysitter, but my friend was 24 and his parents asked him to watch their house while they were gone. They left a list of rules and instructions. It was on a laminated paper and looked like something for a 10-year-old. He was not allowed to answer the door, and if someone kept knocking, he was to call the cops. The mother asked me to stop by the house to meet her 2-year-old son a week before I was supposed to babysit him for the first time. I pulled up to the house and saw that the young boy was standing at the glass front door with a t-shirt on and nothing else. I go in and I must have given the child a strange look because the mom started to explain that her son doesn't like to wear pants, so they let him run around pantsless with no diaper on, though he isn't potty trained. I told her that this made me uncomfortable and asked if I could put pants on him when I was watching him, and she got upset with me and said that they don't like to make their 2-year-old son do anything he doesn't like to do, so they let him run around without pants on, which unfortunately means he goes to the bathroom on the floor since he won't wear a diaper and he isn't potty trained. Not a rule, as I only went there once, but a very odd request. I used to work housekeeping at a hospital. A doctor that was frequently on the floor that I worked on asked me if I could watch his kids on Saturdays. He had 3 toddlers, ages 2, 3, and 4. His wife didn't work, but wanted time to go shopping and get her hair and nails done. I totally understand, as my son was 4. I was also allowed to bring him. I get there early as the doctor is getting ready to leave. He says he's cooking breakfast, and while he gets the kids fed and dressed, could I help change his wife's tampon? She drank a lot the night before and was completely passed out and was leaking and messing up their sheets. He's a doctor! I told him I should work for someone more than a few minutes before I go rummaging in their private parts and that I'd tend to the kids if he tended to his wife. What I really wanted to do was leave, but the kids would be home alone with their hungover mother, so I chose to finish cooking and stay. He went upstairs and sent the kids to the kitchen, where I was putting food on plates. After a little while, he popped his head in and said it was a short day. He was done upstairs and he was leaving. I never met the wife. He came home at noon, gave me $100, and I never spoke to him again. One woman I found through care.com was just generally pretty weird. Some of the weirder things were, only let the kids have 3 spoonfuls of peanut butter each. The boy might want to throw softballs at me. Just try to catch them to avoid getting hit. Also, if he doesn't want to brush his teeth, just hold him down and do it for him, even if he's screaming. Also, both times I babysat, she didn't tell me when she'd be home, and didn't show up until the middle of the night totally wasted. The first time she forgot to pay me, and I was too nervous to say anything, so she had me pick cash up from her mailbox later in the week. She shorted me $5. The kids screamed, hit, fought, and made messes the whole time, and wanted me to chase them around the yard with sticks. I did not. I also stopped going there. Get ready for a creepy story. I was 13 and was babysitting my neighbor's kids. It was my first time, so the parents walked me through all the rules about the bathroom and TV and food and bedtime, etc. Just as the parents were taking off for the night, the mom came back in and whispered to me, "Don't go into the basement." As a teenager in the 80s, my mind went to all of the scariest movies that had basements. I avoided the door to the basement all night until I had put the kids to bed. Then, I walked slowly to the door and put my ear against it. I heard what sounded like whimpering. And then, it sounded like sad laughing. I ran to the couch and started watching TV to get my mind off of it, but then I heard something fall in the basement and knew someone was down there. I really don't know how I got the courage/stupidity to do it, but I went over and opened the door. The whining instantly got louder. I went down just 3 or 4 stairs so I could peek down, and I saw a goat. Not a ghost, a goat. As soon as the goat saw me, he started bleating loudly. It scared the crap out of me. I went upstairs and the goat was still bleating loudly. So much that it woke up the kids. The oldest girl came out and said, "Did you open the door to the basement?" I said, "Yeah, why?" She said, "When you do that, Carlos thinks you're going to feed him and he starts yelling." Thank God I knew it was a goat first, because if she had said that before I went down, I would have thought Carlos was some kidnapped person in the basement who would yell for food. It became very funny to me. The mom came home and I told her what happened, and she almost died of laughing. They were repairing the goat pen and had to keep him in the basement for a few days. I still remember every moment of that night vividly. Edit, since a lot of people were asking, I think she told me not to go into the basement that way, either to mess with me, or she was so used to telling her daughters not to go down there that she didn't even think of how creepy it would sound to someone else. I bet that goat was probably driving her crazy over the last week. I never really had any rules to follow, but I did have one terrible mother. The mom asked me to babysit her 3 kids overnight. As I was in high school, I couldn't do it, so she said she could be back by 9 p.m. I figured it was fine and let my mom know, even though they only lived a few houses away. The kids were great. We played around, watched a movie, I fed them and put them to bed. 9 p.m. rolls around and the mom was nowhere to be found. She hadn't left a number to reach her, and I figured she was just running behind. I cleaned up and watched some TV while waiting for her. 10 p.m. hits, not home. 11 p.m., nope. Finally, at around 12 a.m., I call my mom. I explain what's up, that I'm tired and have school in the morning, etc. She agrees to come and stay at the house with the kids till their mom shows up. Turns out, she didn't come home until around 10 a.m. the next morning, long after my mom had called Child Protective Services. She gave my mom $20 for 16 hours of babysitting. None of the neighborhood kids were allowed to babysit for her after that. When I was a kid, I got paid $75 a week to watch 2 boys over a summer. It was amazing money, but the dad was a big bow hunter, and he made loads of deer chili, and he insisted that his 10-year-old and 2-year-old eat tons of it. They loved it, but the 2-year-old would take these massive, awful, horrible, nasty chili dumps constantly. The dad explained all this to me, and my instructions were to just put him in the shower and hose him down. I was offered plenty of chili, but never ate any. I was babysitting a 3 to 4-ish-year-old girl and an 18-month boy. The boy had to be carried in a buggy, which is all very well, but I was supposed to add some kind of mini stairs, 2 steps on the back of it, so the girl could stand on it because her legs get tired, said parents while making quotation marks with their fingers. The darn thing hit my legs every time I took a step. That kid was also taught to not wait and look for restrooms when she needed to go, and proceeded one time to take a dump in a public garden and wipe herself with a leaf with an ease that certified me that wasn't her first time.
What was something you thought was grossly exaggerated until it happened to you? General anesthesia. 3, 2, 1, and suddenly I'm being moved to the recovery room. I always thought it was kinda cool how a 6-hour surgery can feel like 2 seconds when under anesthesia. The only time I was old enough to remember going under general anesthesia was to get my wisdom teeth out a few years ago. I was freaking out and one nurse had to console me as I was getting the substances put in my system. I started to feel it and it made everything feel better, kinda like the initial effect of morphine, and I remember doing a little dance on the chair and going, "Yeah, let's get this party started." And then it was 2 hours later and it was over. I always thought I could fight it. You cannot fight it. This was the scariest thing. I'd always imagined it would be like being asleep or being passed out, where you wouldn't feel anything or even be aware of sensory stimulation, but you would at least have some sense that time was passing. Nope, it's like a light switch. Off, on. Kidney stones. They're for real. I was out of the country and on an excursion, if you will. Actually, when I felt something weird about 3 inches up and to the right of my belly button. I didn't have back pains until later. When I got back into town, the pain had gotten a little worse and I thought nothing of it. The next day I woke up and it was more sharp pain, so I went to the local hospital and they did a sonogram to check me out. Spleen, appendix, and whatever else they checked for came back fine. They gave me some Vicodin and sent me on my way. I took these daily and was okay, but every once in a while I took a jolt which nearly brought me to my knees, but then went away. Fast forward to coming home. Was on the plane back and started having sharp pains again. Went to the restroom and peed what looked like cranberry juice. Had a small panic attack and went back to my seat and took the Vicodin. Still had 6 hours of flight time left. Was freaking out the whole way home. Back in the States, I went straight to the hospital and they couldn't figure it out. Told them about the sono and no kidney infection. I could see the concerned look on my doctor's face. So they did a CT scan. A couple of hours later, my doctor calls, "I have good news. It's only kidney stones." My initial reaction was, frick, if that's good news, what did you think was wrong with me? Anyway, the report came back TMC, too many to count. I had hundreds all over my kidney, but had a 9mm one stuck in my ureter. That night it moved and I was laying on the bathroom floor throwing up and couldn't move because of the pain. I thought I was dying, worst pain I could physically ever be in. My father had to come pick me up off the floor and take me to the hospital in the back of his Tahoe. They performed a lithotripsy, which isn't a walk in the park either, and went home that afternoon after passing 3 stones and who knows how many blood clots from the procedure. Since then I've passed 2 more that were small but still painful. I've not yet had these up to this point in my life and I live in eternal fear. Let's see how we go. Getting older. Aches, pains, less energy, more responsibilities. Never thought it would happen to me. In a similar vein, how much time speeds up as you get older. I'm 40 in a few months. This year it felt like it went January, February, April, December. Oh god, you're telling me. Seriously, where the frick did 2014 go? Also, 2013 for that matter. I feel like it should still be 2012 to be honest. Sunburns. I'm a brown guy and honestly, I thought my white friends were being dramatic about their sunburns. Then I decided to go fishing for 6 hours without any sunscreen. Oh yeah, sunburns suck. Dude, one time I got so sunburned I couldn't wear clothes for 3 days. I had to ask friends to bring food to my place because I couldn't go outside without clothes. When I woke up, the creases of the sheets would be imprinted onto my dry skin for hours. The very touch of air hurt my skin. It was one of the most painful experiences in my life. I developed a whole galaxy of freckles on my shoulders overnight. I came this close to skin cancer, I swear. I thought people who called in sick or whatever when they threw out their backs were sissies. Then I threw out my back. Holy heck, it hurt to do pretty much anything. I threw out my back and had bronchitis at the same time, the only time I truly wanted to die. At the ripe old age of 19, I started throwing my back out 2 to 3 times a year due to a congenital back problem. Thanks, genetics. I still brace myself every time I have to cough or sneeze, whether I'm having a good day or not. There's nothing quite like the hot, stabbing pain that radiates down through your legs and out the bottom of your heels. My dad threw out his trumpeting once. I didn't know whether to laugh or feel bad for him. Insomnia. Not being able to sleep is freaking maddening. When I was younger, I thought there was no way this could actually be a serious problem. I was wrong. Welcome to my world. What is even worse is if your significant other totally sleeps fine. Ugh. Watching someone else sleep like a little lamb while you're exhausted and still awake is infuriating. That was me every time I had a sleepover. Like, how the frick did you fall asleep in 5 minutes? Then I'm awake for another hour or two just thinking about how much I want to strangle everyone who can fall asleep in under 2 hours. Black ice. I had a suspicion it was mostly something people blamed for careless driving. Then I finally ran into some. Didn't crash or anything, but honestly thought my brakes failed until I parked, stepped out of the car, and nearly fell from the slipperiness. Black ice is some scary crap. Last year, some poor woman launched her car off an overpass after hitting black ice. I pass under this bridge on my daily commute, and it's about a 50-foot drop. She actually walked away from the crash, so she was okay, but my gosh, can you imagine? I would have been dead anyway from the heart attack. On a related note, snow tires. I moved from Arizona to Montana in December. I'm not a very smart person. My dad told me to buy snow tires before departing, but I couldn't find any in Arizona, oddly enough, and concluded my all seasons would be fine. I read a bunch of tutorials about driving on ice before taking off, and I got really good at pumping my brakes about halfway through Utah. Finally, in Idaho, I gave up and decided to try snow tires. I thought it would be a waste of money and wouldn't make a difference. I was wrong. As soon as the snow tires were on, I suddenly had full control of my car again. In conclusion, my dad was right. I always thought hearing adults talk about their nieces and nephews like they were such a huge part of their lives was stupid. I barely know any of my aunts or uncles or cousins or whatever, so it always seems like they were just playing the niece card to make it seem like they have more responsibilities than they really do. Now, I still don't have any nieces or nephews, but my mum married a guy with a pregnant ex-wife when I was 15, and I tell you, that kid is my girl. I've changed my entire lifestyle, my opinions, and how I treat others and the future because of the responsibility I feel towards being there for her and setting a good example. I love her to death. I want to be a role model and live my life in a way that she can be proud of one day. I never realized what it felt like to watch a little baby grow up into a brilliant kid, or how important a child can be in your life even if they're not yours. And she's not even my blood. I get it now. Falling in love. Lemony Snicket sums it up perfectly. One of the remarkable things about love is that despite very irritating people writing poems and songs about how pleasant it really is quite pleasant. The day some sappy love song comes on and you're like, yeah, I get what they're talking about. How painful a badly cramping muscle is. I didn't buy it, then I had one when swimming one day, and I actually thought I was going to drown. My wake-up call one morning was a double hamstring plus a calf cramp. I don't know the odds of that happening, but my gosh, it was terrible. Eat a frickin' banana. All y'all motherfrickers need potassium. Vertigo. Oh my gosh, it's a nightmare. It really is. The first time I got it, it completely blindsided me. First thing in the morning, I opened my eyes and the horizon became vertical, which would have been amazing if I didn't feel like crap a millisecond later. Becoming dizzy really doesn't do vertigo justice. I literally watched the world rotate 90 degrees. Then I just had to wait until it stopped. Sleep paralysis. It's like my eyes were awake, but my brain was still asleep. I couldn't move my body. I couldn't breathe. The harder I tried to regain my breath, the harder it was to breathe. I knew it was pitch black in my room, but it was like everything was strobing colors, like dark, very deep colors, and there was a deep ringing in my ears. It only happened to me once, and it was terrifying. Sleep paralysis is the worst. The first time it happened to me, I had no clue what was going on, and I remember thinking I was dead, and I remember trying to scream, but couldn't. And the more I struggled to move or scream, the worse it felt. I've had it happen a few times since then, and since now I know what it is, I honestly just lay there until it passes. My sister was in a car accident over 15 years ago and still freaks out when a car gets too close. I thought it was just her being stupid until I was hit by a drunk driver. Now whenever I'm a passenger, I get really nervous and freak out if someone doesn't look like they're going to stop or like they're going to hit us. A panic attack. The movies show it as an almost humorous exaggeration of the severity, or so I thought, and then it happened to me. I realized those movies were absolutely horrible. Yeah, the panic attacks in the show Ted Lasso are actually about some of the most real depictions of this kind of event that I've seen in media so far. They are harrowing. Also, if you haven't watched Ted Lasso, watch Ted Lasso. How hard it really is to just find a job, let alone one that pays for you to have a comfortable life. Wait, it gets worse. You'll soon find out that a lot of the people that have those jobs are lazy, incompetent fricks who for some reason or another are immune from being fired. Especially now that you have to apply online everywhere. I was spending at least 15 hours online a week for months, filling out tedious applications while my savings dwindled. One day my mum says, "If you spend half as much time looking for a job as you did on that computer..." Oh man, I lost my freaking mind. I explained it, but to this day she doesn't get it. Even when I found work, I had 2 jobs where it ended up costing me money to even show up, and I had one where I was just barely breaking even. Not to mention 20 or so interviews of, "We'll call you," and all that fricking bullcrap. Wasting my gas driving all the way wherever, getting all dressed up and doing the "I'll suck whatever you want me to suck" dance. Frick that crap. If I'm ever unemployed again, I'll use my last chunk of cash to hire a hitman to perforate my trachea with a rusty screwdriver. I hate when people who've not had to do a job search or even been in the workforce for 15 years try to give you advice for finding a job. You just want to shake them and yell, "It isn't like that anymore." The whole system is different. The advice you're giving me is outdated and basically worthless. Bad period cramps. For those who don't know, cramps can vary in pain level with age. When I was younger, I thought I just had awesome pain tolerance or that cramps really weren't that bad, as I've had a lot of painful experiences. Broken bones, chronic migraines, tears, sprains, strains, slips, the lot, and been okay. Then it all went to heck. For one day a month, I am literally in too much pain to stand up straight. I have to stamp my feet on the floor to keep from crying out if I'm for some reason able to get myself vertical and my feet to the floor. If I'm lucky enough to have the day off, I curl up around the toilet and just cry because I'm in so much pain I want to throw up. But since throwing up won't make me feel better, I just lay there hugging Ralph the big white phone for moral support. It's so painful I can't think. It's easily at the same pain level as a bad migraine or throwing my back out, both of which I've experienced. Holy frick, ouch. The kind of depression that makes it physically impossible to pull yourself out of bed in the morning. Putting down a pet. I held my best friend of 13 years' head in my hands as he slowly slipped away from me. It's been weeks and I still can't get past it. I've lost people I'm close to, and it didn't touch how hard this was. He wasn't just a dog, he was a family member. My cuddle buddy who slept in my bed with me every night from the time he was a puppy. I don't want another dog ever again. I just want my boy back. I would give up anything I have or ever will have to have him back. I miss you and I love you, Link. Toxic relationships. I always got mad at my cousin for not leaving a guy who horribly mistreated her, and then got into a similar relationship and it was really hard to get out. People are also unsympathetic to child mistreatment that spills over into adulthood. People always say, you should have moved out earlier, or even worse, they're your family, you should forgive them for what happened in the past. No, it still happens whenever I see them. I won't forgive a life of mistreatment. No one would say anything like that to someone who'd escaped a terrible partner. My mother had complete control over me and had even raised me to think she could read my mind at all times. It sounds stupid now, but when that's all you've ever known, it can be difficult to change the way you think. I never misbehaved as a teen, yet I was always a problem child, and my mother still tells the story of my life in terms of my anger issues and attitude problems. I wasn't allowed to go out even when I was 20. I wasn't allowed to work at all, to the point where I'm now panicking almost nightly about getting a job. I was yelled at, hit, and subtly insulted to the point where I have no confidence in anything I do, even though objectively I know I'm capable of dealing with a lot. I have nightmares most nights about being trapped back at home. I get really jumpy when I travel alone because I was actively taught that women like me get taken advantage of for being stupid enough to go out without other people for protection. It really hurts too when people expect 20 years of horrible treatment to be fixed by 2 years with lower contact with the one who mistreated me. My friends get mad at me for being overly sensitive when they tease me jokingly. I was traumatized with similar techniques. It would just be nice if more people around me understood what it's like. The pain of getting cheated on, consequently realizing you can't trust a person who you've given your heart to. I thought it was so dramatic and a call for attention when I heard other people complain about relationship problems. Little did I realize it was literally like a knife stabbing you in the chest. This. When I found out my ex was cheating on me and got one of the girls, there were multiple girls, pregnant, I literally collapsed on the floor in the middle of my dorm room. I have never and will never bawl again like I did then. I cried every day, multiple times a day. People would say the usual, "Hey, how are you?" and I would lose it. Never have experienced pain like that. My first girlfriend, who I was with for almost 2 years, cheated on me, and that crap cuts you up way worse and in so many more ways than you're led to believe. There's the obvious feeling of betrayal, and then there's everything it does to your confidence, and the fact that you feel like you can never trust anyone ever again, not just a significant other, but also friends who could have known, and then there's more deep-rooted crap like how emasculating it is, or what people who knew it had happened before you did must have thought about you. And then you're going to start going around in circles feeling like a bad person because all you care about is your place as a man and so on and so forth. My ex actually introduced me to the guy she cheated on me with between the time it happened and the time that I found out. Even the slightest thought of what he must have thought of me at that point makes me want to flip my crap. Never cheat and never be the person that someone cheats on someone with. That crap doesn't just cut you up, it changes you for life. How loud small arms are. I knew intellectually that they were noisy, but unconsciously assumed they were a movie or video game volume. Went to a firing range and shot a variety of them. Even with ear protection, they still feel overpoweringly loud, and it's clear as day you'd damage your hearing if you fired them without taking any safety precautions. Can't look at most movie gunfights the same again. Also, I had earplugs in and those gun range earmuffs over the top. Also, how hard it is to hit anything, especially with a smaller weapon like a gat. You think you're properly aiming down the sights, then you fire, there's a big flash and it kicks back in your hand, and you look at the target and realize you were way off. And that's taking your time in a controlled environment. I couldn't imagine trying to be accurate under pressure while trying to hit a small moving target, not without a crap load of training. Yep, being at an indoor range is one of the most disorienting experiences a man or woman can subject themselves to. I'm pretty sure that even with the proper protection, all regular patrons must need hearing aids later in life. Just Texas. Alright, I'm being a smart aleck, but I'm also being very truthful. I've lived in a number of different places because I was a military brat and a vagabond, and I've encountered a hell of a number of different people. As an adult, moving to Texas surprised me. I thought I'd find it had been exaggerated, but the appetites, the personalities, the pride, all of it are bigger in Texas. They freaking love their state. The pain you feel when, and after, eating a ghost pepper. I thought people on YouTube were just exaggerating to get views. I have an Indian flatmate who cooks with those. She must be immune because the other day I came in after work and suddenly it was like I'd walked into a cloud of napalm. I was on my knees coughing and crying and she just looked down from the pan and rolled her eyes. It's not that bad. I thought I was going to die. Obsessive-compulsive disorder. I remember as a kid watching one of those MTV True Life documentaries about people with OCD and thinking about how ridiculous it was. I mean, why can't these people just not wash their hands 50 times a day? Why can't they just lock the door once and be done with it? A few years later, when I was around 16, I started to develop some strange habits. For instance, if I heard even just 1 second of any song on my iPod, I would have to listen to the rest of the song in its entirety, down to the last second. So if said song ended and I didn't get my iPod paused before the next song started, I would have to listen to that song in its entirety. These were the first signs of horrible things to come. Over the next 5 years or so, my OCD manifested into almost every facet of my life in different ways. The compulsions would get more and more complex to the point where I would spend hours trying to fix it. Life was miserable and every day was a challenge. I could go on all day about the different compulsions and manifestations, but this is already the longest post I've ever made. I did get better for the most part, it's not ruining my life anymore, and it's pretty dormant most of the time, but every now and then it creeps up and tries to bite me. I've learned to fight it pretty well though. The happiness of a stable, healthy, loving long-term relationship. I wish this were higher up in the list. My significant other and I periodically ask each other, when does it get hard? Because we're both from dysfunctional families. We've both accomplished so much because we support each other in a way I didn't know was possible. The nights we check out of adulthood to make pillow forts and eat ice cream for dinner make me feel like we're in Calvin and Hobbes. I've been told by cynical people, oh, you're still in the honeymoon phase? You'll start having fights soon. Like we're just too dumb to get into fights yet. We've been married 6.5 years exactly today, and we've been living together for more than 9 years. I think if we were going to start fighting, we'd have done it by now. Literally not a single fight in that entire time. Not to me, but to a very close friend, getting taken advantage of on a date. She simply wasn't the same person anymore. She went into a shell and refused to even seek help. It took almost 2 years of convincing her to take her to a therapist, and 3 years after that for her to almost come back to her old self. But even now, she refuses to trust men. Getting a bad, we're talking 2nd or 3rd degree, burn. I've broken 3 bones, gotten a multitude of concussions, had surgery and much more, but when I got 2nd and 3rd degree burns on my chest, nothing compared. The pain is unending and you can't escape it. You know in movies when that scary monster or psycho murderer is coming for a character and they just freeze in their tracks? You start yelling at the screen, "Run away, moron!" Yeah, well, that totally happens if you get scared enough. Your whole body just freezes to the spot even when you desperately want to run. It's horrible. Walking home from the bus in middle school, I had to pass this enormous Rottweiler that lived in a small yard enclosed in a 3-foot fence. Not nearly enough to keep it in. The dog would bark furiously from the moment it saw me until I went out of sight. I was terrified every day. I generally like dogs, but there was no question that this one could maul me. Well, the inevitable happened and it jumped the fence. I tried to scream, tried to run, but couldn't do anything but cry. It was awful. I couldn't attract anyone's attention or help myself. I felt so scared and alone. Like you, I always thought it would be easy to get myself out of danger. It's not. Lucky for me, the Rottweiler wanted to only lick my hands and get a little pat. But man, was I scared.
What is the most inoffensive thing you've seen someone get offended by? My 7-month-old was wearing a shirt that had a rocket ship and the NASA logo, and some middle-aged woman in the shop said, "He shouldn't be wearing that because he's clearly not an astronaut." I was dumbfounded. I still remember in kindergarten when my friend and I were reading all the colors out loud on one of those Crayola super packs. I straight up got yelled at and sent to the principal's office for saying, quote, "orange pizzazz," because the teacher said I called someone a pea butt not censored, and would not listen despite having the crayon as evidence. After a 30-minute scolding and waiting for my mom to leave work to pick me up for my suspension, she came in all apologetic. When I explained to her the whole situation, not the school side, Ma went ape. I'd heard her say crap once. That's the only swear I ever heard from her, and we had just been rear-ended in traffic. How about
Yeah!
Can he say
Yeah!
Cause you're all being
Yeah!
right now. This is
Yeah!
ridiculous. And just went off while I'm sitting there all surprised and the principal is just red AF. I got unsuspended on the spot, but she pulled me out of school for the day anyway. We had a lovely day, and she explained very well how I shouldn't swear like that unless absolutely necessary and I've exhausted all civility. Quote, when being civil simply isn't working, sometimes you might have to call someone a pea-butt. The next day at school, I learned that I now had the stigma of being the kid who got the Crayola Super Pack taken away. We were choosing a mascot for a summer camp where I worked. It was the first day of camp, and we'd always let the campers vote on a mascot that we'd use for the rest of the summer as a sort of bonding thing. This year, the kids voted for wolves as the mascot. It was almost unanimous. But one kid, probably about 9 or 10, threw a fit because wolves are, quote, bad guys and predators and killers, and he doesn't want to be a wolf, he wants to be a hero. He refused to participate in any team activities because he didn't want to be on a team with the, quote, bad guys. At one point, we brought in a guy in a full mascot wolf costume for some anti-bullying program, and the kid had a massive tantrum. I almost felt like we were going to learn at some point that his brother was killed by wolves or some other tragic origin story. I did feel bad for the boy because I was fairly certain he had some kind of unaddressed emotional difficulties or something, but we weren't going to change the mascot name that almost everyone voted for. The really sad thing is that wolf populations have suffered a lot due to stereotypes that they're bad. Friendly reminder to go watch The Bad Guys, a beautifully animated DreamWorks movie with a bumpin' soundtrack and a cast of characters that are incredibly fun to watch. Using a walking stick. I was in a car accident a few years ago and it screwed my leg up. Since then, I've been using a walking stick. I was walking to shop, pre-pandemic, and an old bloke gave me the dirtiest look I've ever seen. What do you need a cane for? You're only a kid. He actually got quite mad just seeing me using a stick. Like, my dude, I'm just out trying to buy some milk. I don't need your crap today. I didn't say that out loud, I just said it to myself after I got home. Maybe 22 years ago, I had a phone interview with a baking company. I didn't care to have my peers know what I was up to, so I took the call on my cell phone in my car. The call was crystal clear and no technical issues. At one point, they had mentioned the weather and asked how it was where I was. I told him that I was sitting in my car and I could see that it was actively snowing and whatnot. The interviewer asked me, "Are you taking this call on a cell phone?" I told him I was. Then he asked me if I thought that was appropriate. I asked him what he meant by that. He said he thought it was kind of rude to take a formal call on a cell phone. I told him I would be more than happy to conclude the interview if talking on a cell phone was an issue. If he was interested, I'd be happy to continue it the next day when I'd be at a desk. He again repeated how rude he thought it was that I had called from a cell phone and that there was no need to continue the interview process. I disagreed with the first point, but did agree with the second. To this day, I wonder what the heck he was talking about and where he was coming from. One time, someone got offended when I put on my seatbelt, thought I was commenting on her ability to drive. We used an app on work called Bonfire. One person refused to use it because bonfires are for witchcraft and pagans. I spent 9 hours deep cleaning the house for an inspection. I went above and beyond, clearing my work schedule and going the extra mile, and my roommate, quote, double-checked my work. He had a complete psychotic meltdown because I forgot to sweep underneath the couch. I moved out the next day and never spoke to him again. I was at the vet with my cat and he sneezed. This was apparently very offensive to an elder woman. She was there with a corgi, and she started screaming at me for about 30 minutes about pet hygiene. At school, someone didn't have a calculator and asked if anyone had one they could borrow. Someone offered them a pink calculator and they refused, saying that they were offended they'd try and give them something girly. Fellas, is it gay to do math with a pink calculator? I once listened to my boss try to lecture the fire marshal because he was talking about something being flame retardant. Her reasoning was you should just call it fireproof because retardant was an awful word. It was one of those times where I really should have tried to stop her, but instead, I just stood off to the side, probably making a surprised Pikachu face. I got in trouble in kindergarten for saying the word dead. Apparently it was too violent.
Oh my god, have you not subscribed to Am I the Genius yet? That's literally so offensive. You should do it now and subscribe to Am I the Jerk too. So link in the description or whatever.
I had a coworker who got mad at me because I asked her not to tickle me. A, that's inappropriate at work. B, we're not children, we're not in a relationship, and we're not family. C, I don't like being tickled. She flipped out and said everyone likes being tickled and I was being mean to her. Happily, my boss had my back. Edit, this happened over a decade ago. I don't work with that woman or for that company. In fact, even the company doesn't exist anymore. I am also a woman. The coworker was very young and immature. This was her first job, her first time in a professional environment, and she really had no clue about professional workplace behavior. I wasn't upset because she truly thought she was being friendly. But I still don't like being tickled. When I was a child, my mom paid for something with a check. The cashier remarked that my mom had nice handwriting. My mom flew off the handle, and we had to storm out of the shop in outrage. To this day, I have no idea what happened. I'm a disabled person. My life sucks because of my disability, and no longer being able to do the things I used to love makes me quite depressed sometimes. Some jerkwad tried to lecture me about how I was ableist for wishing there was a cure for my disability. Screw me for not enjoying being in constant pain and possibly ending up in a wheelchair in the future, I guess. I worked at a restaurant, and we put up some Halloween decorations. We had to take them all down when someone found the glittery skull decoration offensive. My mom got mad because, and I quote, she never asks me for money, referring to me. I'm sorry? Would you rather I constantly bug you for cash so I can buy candy and stuff? Back when I was in grade school, a teacher of mine was discussing something. I don't exactly remember the context, and he said God or a God in order to be neutral to those with various religious beliefs, and probably to cover his butt since he was commenting about religion while in school. And a girl in my class got so upset/offended about it, she started bawling about how he is being disrespectful to her beliefs. The Pixar short Lava. He walked out saying it was deeply offensive and didn't explain why. Gets offended. Refuses to elaborate. Leaves. Profit? Typing in someone's phone number to activate their rewards card. Finished typing it in, found her name, proceeded with the transaction, and said, "You're good to go." The woman replied with,
What is that supposed to mean?
and she gave me a fiery glare as if I just kicked her toddler across the store. It means, I found your information. You'll get your points. Oh, okay then. I still can't figure out why she flipped out like that. It was a rewards card. She got her points and she got her discount. What? The only possible way I can imagine getting offended by this is from never having heard that phrase before and assuming it meant I would like you to leave. But even then, that is quite an assumption. Race tangent. I called someone fam and she blew up at me, saying that I clearly meant the N-word. Had someone get offended by me calling my brother bro. They insisted that I was racist and that white people can't be related to Mexicans. Like, seriously, lady, that's not how genetics work. We are 100% related and are a mix of white and Native American. It's not that unheard of for one biological sibling to come out lighter or darker than the other. And even if we weren't related, seriously? I'm racist for calling someone close to me my bro despite being different skin tones? Seriously. Thank you for coming to my rant session. Have a good day. Someone once got offended because I used the word black in conversation. I was talking about an article of clothing / the color black. They tried to make it into something about race and that I shouldn't use the term black anymore and should say African American. I said that makes no sense. I'm literally talking about the color black. Am I supposed to say I'm wearing an African American colored shirt? Maybe I'm crazy, but I think that's actually offensive. This has been a race tangent. The Canadian flag told me that if they put up a Canadian flag in Pennsylvania, the neighbors would come and shoot everybody. Not quite sure about the logic on that one. This guy at a Halloween party I was at was dressed in a giant bacon costume. Some girl was yelling at him for being so offensive towards Jews and Muslims. She was neither Jewish nor Muslim. One of the Muslim guys at the party asked her what the heck she was talking about, but she didn't back down. I have no idea why people feel they need to go out of their way to be inaccurately offended on behalf of other people's cultures / religions. A picture of an eye. We have an organization-wide theme every year, and all the PCs on our network have the same background and theme, which can't be changed. So, this year's theme is Vision is 2020, and the background was a zoomed-in picture of an eye in really awesome colors. 2 women on staff wrote letters to complain that the picture was, quote, heathen, as it drew from, quote, Illuminati imagery and paid tribute to the, quote, all-seeing eye of Egyptian deities. They whined and complained to such an extent that the picture was eventually changed to shut them up and let the normal folks get back to our actual work. This. An article from BBC states, Professor Greg Patton at the University of Southern California, USC, was telling students in a communications lecture last month about filler or pause words such as or you know in Chinese. Footage of his lecture, which has now gone viral, shows Professor Patton saying, in China, the most common pause word is that. So in China, it might be ni, ge, ni, ge, ni, ge. Enunciated, ni, ge, sounds like the N-word, which led several of the professor's students to complain to the university. Responding to the complaint, the dean of the university, Jeffrey Garrett, told students that Professor Patton would no longer be teaching the course. Quote, it is simply unacceptable for the faculty to use words in class that can marginalize, hurt, and harm the psychological safety of our students, he said. The university says that Professor Patton, quote, volunteered to step away from his role amid the investigation into complaints made against him. This is the stupidest thing to get offended over that I've seen in quite a while, and damaging to actual cases of racist terminology being used inappropriately. This reminds me of the discussions people have had in class about books like Huckleberry Finn or To Kill a Mockingbird, where uses of the N-word have historical context. Nobody asked for my opinion, but here's what I think. Preserving history is instrumental in teaching ways to prevent it from happening again. We need to know what bad examples look like so we can set better ones. If we completely sanitize history and skip over it, it defeats the purpose of learning it. I told my sister in a private message that it's, quote, first, spelled 1ST, not first, 1RST, after she posted something on Facebook with the spelling error. She flipped out, saying how I'm a, quote, bully, and I need to, quote, appreciate that her spelling is more unique. Edit, she's 27. I sang the song Hit the Road Jack to a kid I just beat in a game while in the 3rd grade mockingly. He took that as me calling him a jackbutt. He told the recess monitor this. I was told to stand against a wall away from the rest of the kids with the recess monitor. I am now 27, married with 2 kids, but I will never forget this. If you ever see this, I didn't call you a jackbutt, Jared, but now, screw you forever! Got chewed out once for saying, yes ma'am, to a lady. I'm in the South. That's what we do. Southerner here, I can explain this one. So when you refer to someone as ma'am, usually what that means is that they're either older than you or it's used as a term of respect. So if you're addressing one of your superiors, you'll usually say, yes ma'am. As for the age of someone you're talking to, if they're only a few years older than you, they might take that as you thinking they're old. Which, I know, that sounds kind of stupid, but some people are really sensitive about their age. So, tread with caution. A sandwich. I kid you not. My ex-husband was given a sandwich by our then 13-year-old daughter, and because she cut the sandwich, he went off on a massive strop about how his sandwiches should never be cut. The poor kid's face, she was crushed. It still winds me up to no end every time I think about it. I managed a small, new team that had no procedures or policies, so I set about instituting some. Quote, you never know. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and then no one would know how to process these requests, I told them, when asking for their feedback and for them to write up how they did their tasks. Then, we would come back together and decide best practices in a meeting. Little man filed a complaint to the manager for my use of, quote, violent imagery and said that he felt threatened. It was a whole thing. Ultimately, he got fired. Screw him, bye! Edit, well, this blew up. For clarity, he didn't get fired for this one incident. He was a horrible employee with real issues having a woman in charge. In French, we have a way to address for a man, monsieur, a married woman, madame, an unmarried woman, mademoiselle, and we used to have one for an unmarried man, mademoiselle, which disappeared from official paperwork since I don't even know when. In the name of gender equality, mademoiselle was also removed a few years ago from official paperwork. Also, in the name of gender equality, some employees were told not to call young women mademoiselle anymore and to go with madame. So the trick is, some women will get offended when called madame because it makes them feel old, and some women will get offended when called mademoiselle because it's sexist. Clerks are doomed. I'm a white South African. Born here, my nationality is South African. Some American girl got offended that I called myself South, quote, African as a white dude and said that only people of color can call themselves that. Brah, it's a nationality. The kid that got the cops called on him and suspended from school for having a Nerf gun in his room during a Zoom class. At my wedding, we marked the vegetarian items as vegetarian. This made the one vegetarian at my wedding, sister-in-law who hates me, fly into a catatonic rage because we are singling out the vegetarian food as vegetarian and not treating it as normal food. Then how the heck are they supposed to know it's vegetarian? I had a pastor that insisted we call candy canes, quote, Jesus sticks, because Christmas is all about Jesus, y'all. Ain't no fun to be had otherwise. Well, I was 7 and accidentally referred to the Holy Jesus stick as a candy cane in his presence. And I crap you not, he speed walked over to my dad to tell on me and carry on about how offensive it is to see all the world trying to remove Christ from Christmas. It starts in the home, den of sin without Jesus, something, dark side. My dad asked him if he was serious. Spoiler, he was very, very serious. And then told him to grow up. And that's how my dad dressed up as Santa a couple weeks later and came into the church yelling, "Ho, ho, ho, candy canes!" while passing said satanic candy canes to all the little children during the children's church portion of service. The pettiness runs deep, and it was delicious. When my ex and I were looking at houses, we brought his dad, let's call him Dave, to see houses we already liked. The real estate agent didn't spend enough time on telling Dave he was right that the bottom step was too tall. So later that night, I got to hear an hour-long lecture from Dave about how the agent was a piece of crap that was trying to take advantage of us. A large reason I'm single now is because my mental issues are too much to deal with, but Dave here is definitely a contributing factor as well. An AIDS walk happening in front of our restaurant. My boss said, well, they better not come in here spreading their disease. I was like, dude, that's really not how AIDS or their walks work. One Easter Sunday, a lady in church was wearing a hat that had the Easter bunny, chicks, and colored eggs as part of its design. The woman in the pew behind her took umbrage, telling the lady that Easter was about the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, not about, quote, silly rabbits, chicks, and eggs. This happened just last week. I work at a bank in an affluent part of Atlanta. Read old white money, and a woman called in to let us know she was offended by the security questions for her online banking. The security questions she herself set up. What was your mother's maiden name?
That's none of your business!
My dad loves to tell the story of how, shortly after they were married, he and Mom went to get some fast food. As they pulled up to the drive-thru window, my very conservative mom saw a sign that said, "Condiments available upon request," and said, "Oh my God, that's disgusting. Why would a restaurant feel the need to give those out?" She had misread it and thought they were giving out condoms upon request. One of my coworkers was surprised and said, "Oh my God." A religious coworker overheard her using God's name in vain and reported it to HR. They had to have meetings with HR and the managers about respecting people's religion. The lady said, "Oh my God, she didn't wish for the death of Christianity." It was ridiculous. Yeah, fun fact about that "oh my God" thing people love to get their panties in a twist about. The whole reason you shouldn't use the Lord's name in vain is so you can't murder people and say that God told you to do it. Abraham and Isaac is the prime example of this. God literally had to intervene and be like, "Hey, yo, Abraham, chill out. I didn't say you could do that."
What was your funniest time walking in on somebody in the buff? I work at McDonald's, and one day while I was handing a woman her food, I saw that she was in the middle of sending naughty pictures of herself. When I was living in New Zealand, one night my roommate brought home a guy from a bar, and they did the deed on the couch. It just so happened that the couch was on the opposite side of the wall from my bed, so I heard it all. But that's besides the point. The next morning I woke up to a text from a different roommate saying that there was a clothless guy on the couch. I casually went to the bathroom to sneak a peek, and there he was, all in his glory, passed out on the couch. The roommate who brought him home was nowhere to be found. We later found her curled up on the bathroom floor, also in the buff. And now they're married. The end. That's not how you do a one-night stand at all. As a kid, I always went to summer camp in a different state, and we would often take multi-day canoe trips around the general area. On one of these trips, after a long day of paddling down a river, the trip leader decided to stop on an island and set up camp for the night. As the day progressed, the sunshine turned to rain, and before we knew it, it was a full-on monsoon. As me and a bunch of other boys huddled under a tarp, someone pointed out two people swimming on the other side of the river. We noticed it's two guys and a girl and continue to watch. Before we know it, the girl stands up, revealing she is completely clothless. In fact, all three were skinny dipping. Being teenage boys, we decided to yell and wave at them, asking if they'd like any s'mores, while taking turns looking through the binoculars. We thought they would be embarrassed. However, they weren't fazed by this, and one of the dudes began to swim over. I'll never forget his face as he got closer and realized we were a bunch of little kids. Needless to say, we gave him a s'more. In conclusion, saw an unclothed river girl and fed an equally stark-as man a s'more. I have a similar story. Me and my family were floating down a local river. This place is a real party every day in summer. Anyway, we get to this one corner, and there's this girl flashing both banks of the river. Of course, all the guys yell in appreciation, and here I am, a 15-year-old kid with his parents, heading to the end of our floating trip, and my mum is trying to get my attention. Finally, she says, "Jake, they aren't even a very good bosom." Without skipping a beat, I turn to her and say, "Mom, they're still a bosom." I swear my dad shed a tear when I said that. Sort of accidental. When I was in high school, I lived with my dad. Our house had a pool and a hot tub, and Pops was a randy old hound. He was shooping it to what seemed like all the divorced ladies in my neighborhood. Being single, well off, and having a hot tub really greased the wheels. Anyway, he and his girlfriends weren't exactly incognito, and after a few drinks tended to come in and out of the house, where I was, in varying states of undress, to use the bathroom and get refills or snacks. Let's just say that I saw many more of my friends' mums than was polite to discuss. Well, at least it made for some decent online trash talk. Yeah, well, my dad fricked your mom. Yet another video where the subject matter requires me to come up with a lot of safe terms instead of the original words, in this case, for the condition of being undressed. Let's see how many I can slot in. I guess it's not really accidental because she dropped hints later that it was intentional, but at the time I thought it was. Went on a date with a co-worker. While waiting for her to get ready in her living room, I could see her full bare figure in the reflection in a mirror on a door. She had a ridiculously awesome body, too. I used to work in an electronics store. We regularly had promo staff and reps in on the weekends to sell their stuff in store. This particular weekend, we had 3 models in promoting some camera or something. Late afternoon, I go into the customer collections room where reserved stock is kept to look for an item. As I'm clearly in there looking for something, these girls burst in and start taking off their branded dresses to change and go home. In shock, I say, "Do you want me to go out?" And they're like, "Nah, it's okay." Then some checkout girl comes in and laughs, gasps, and drags me out. Gutted. Checkout girl just doesn't understand. Becky's a B-word. Oh, she wants to be called Rebecca now. When I was about 6, I was at the ocean with my parents. My dad was playing with me in the breaking waves on the beach. I saw a rough wave wash over this young lady a few feet from us, and it totally swept her bikini bottom off. I couldn't believe it, and no one, including her, seemed to be aware for several long seconds. It was a massive late 1970s bush. I saw it before my dad and pointed and yelled, "Look at the hair!" My dad was up to speed quickly and swept me up facing the other way, as a guy apparently with the woman somehow found her bikini before it was lost forever. She was sitting down in the water when he brought them over and said, "You lose something?" I learned a lot that day. I was on a Mediterranean cruise in summer, so the top deck was filled with people sunbathing. This one lady with rather a large chest was sunbathing with her family, taking off her bikini straps, as some do to avoid tan lines, I guess. Anyway, she accidentally dropped it and I got a full-on view of one of her maracas. She looked around to see if anyone noticed, caught my eye, and gave me a cheeky grin before I looked away blushing. When I was working as a PA on a TV show, we filmed an episode at a fashion show. I spent the evening wandering around backstage getting models to sign releases. Most of them were undressed or half undressed. Best work day of my life. Was working in my fish and chip shop, and just across the road is a bunch of terrace houses. The windows upstairs start on the floor, but I assume the girl had no idea. My mum actually pointed it out to me, and it was a girl in her natural state in front of the window. The guys in the garage around the corner were walking down the street opposite of her window and got an eyeful as well. I later learned she was the sister of a guy I went to school with. Your mum is a bro. This was also one of my top "this crap just kicked in" moments. I was hiking Mount Lafayette and I knew that I was nearing the top. It's a decent hike, so I was pretty beat and ready for a break. On the last climb, I could see a large boulder up ahead that was sitting at the summit. I pushed forward a bit and looked up again toward the boulder. At the base of it was a gorgeous, mostly naked girl squatting down. I thought to myself, well, this is a hell of a reward for the hike. She then proceeded to stand, zip up a full Scooby-Doo costume, and walk over to her friends. When I was a junior in high school, I had a math teacher that was probably in her late 20s or early 30s. One day, near the end of the first semester, she was wearing a dress of sorts. It was in Florida, so it wasn't getting cold at all, and she was just trying to reach something off the top shelf near her desk, when the two straps holding up her dress just snapped, and the entire dress fell to her feet. Sure, she was still wearing panties, but the dress didn't hide bra straps that well. And well, that was nice. I didn't have her the second semester, but from what I heard, she got in some trouble for wearing inappropriate attire for a teacher, and had been suspended for the first month of the semester. I installed security alarms, cameras, sensors, and locks. On one install, I placed a camera in the master bedroom like the husband had asked. While I was still there installing, I was checking the cameras and finishing up the tests, and the wife came out of the bathroom completely naked from the shower. I hastily tried to exit the screen, but the husband who was peering over my shoulder told me not to and just stared at his naked wife while I was in between him and the screen. Just to be clear, I did not do the deed with either of them, that time. Was at an indoor water park waiting in line for the attraction that simulates surfing, Flow Rider, I think. Well, there was this really cute girl up and she bails face first. Now, if you know these attractions, you know that there's a lot of force behind the water. As it turns out, it's enough force to completely remove a person's bikini, top and bottom. Must have been really embarrassing for her, but I liked the piercings. Not sure if you can say accidentally, but my neighbor used to be a manager for exotic dancers. One day I'm out in my garden and happened to look up at their back bedroom. That's when I discovered where auditions took place. I got a lot of fresh air from that day on. I own an adult nightclub and auditions are at my house. Yeah, that sounds above board for sure. Around 16 at the time, I left my house after my sister and her two friends came over, one of which is just absolutely banging with an amazing body that I may have thought about once or twice anyway. Nobody else was home. Forgot something in my room, so I ran back in, but I guess nobody heard me come in. I walked down the hallway to my room and past my sister's doorway that was open. I glance over and my brain locks me into place mid-stride, jaw hits the floor, while it burns the image of her butt-naked cupping her chesticles. They all look over at me and scream. I can't look away. She runs toward me and closes the door. I ran to my room, took a few minutes to savor what I saw, and left. I was about 10 and we went snorkeling with the group on vacation. This old, unattractive woman popped out while she was underwater. She didn't notice. I couldn't stop staring. First real bosom I ever saw. That was an image I didn't want and it is now burned into my head. Thank you for that, original poster. My sister and her boyfriend were doing the deed. It was hard to tell with the noise. Well, after an hour, I hear her door close and I think, thank God he left, I can take a crap now. I walk into the bathroom and drop my pants in the dark and start to squat when the lights turn on and her boyfriend walks out in the buff, full staff, and says, "Ready for more?" I just stare in shock and he now realizes that I'm not my sister. Just coughs and walks away. I no longer feel safe to crap in my own bathroom. Pull my pants up and just go to bed. Female friend of mine was getting ready for her sister's wedding. She was sending me snaps of herself asking questions like, necklace or no, to me and her boyfriend, and she accidentally sent me a picture of her mammary glands hanging out in the dress she was wearing. Trust me, she didn't intend on sending me that picture. Work at a hotel on the beach. Usually, every night before I leave, I take a walk around the building just to make sure everything is okay, people are quiet, etc. All of our rooms have balconies, but luckily the way our building is set up, you can't see into another balcony from another balcony. Earlier that day, I had a newlywed couple checking in. All went normal then. Later that night, did my rounds and I saw them on their balcony. He's leaning up against a patio chair turned backwards, pants pulled down, and she's sitting on the chair giving him head. Okay, for all purposes that's technically an evictable offense, but I just remembered they're a newlywed couple, no one else can see them on their balcony the way our building is configured, so I just turned around, walked back inside and let it be. At least I knew their marriage got off to a good start, hopefully it stayed that way. During college, I was drunk at a party that ended up moving to a local bar. One of the hot girls in the class ahead of mine came up to me and this other dude. The other dude, I guess, had a bet with her or something, and took her walking up as the perfect time to remind her. He said, "Remember, you still need to flash me." I might be paraphrasing. She gives him an annoyed look and then just flashes the both of us for a good 5 to 10 seconds. Very nice sight, would look again. My wife used to do triathlons, the sprint and Olympic lengths, not Ironmans. She was doing a women's-only sprint triathlon and I'm hanging out near her bike waiting for her to return from the swim, first leg of the race. The most experienced athletes bike and run in their one-piece swimsuit. Inexperienced people take the time to change their clothes. There was a woman in her late 20s changing nearby my wife. Obviously new to this stuff, she had planned a different set of clothes for each activity. She had some friends holding up towels to shield her while she changed from her swimwear to her bicycling gear. She got the suit off and struggled to get her bike shorts on over her wet legs while crouching behind the towels. Then she said, "Oh, frick it," stood up bare-chested and proceeded to struggle with her athletic bra. She had a nice all-over tan, I'll give her that much. Walking to school on a soggy morning, saw my art teacher in her minivan changing her clothes. Normally you can't really see into this side of the passenger area windows, because they were all semi-tinted a deeper color, but it just stopped raining a bit earlier and the sun came through the clouds and shined down on the car, lighting it and the area in general up very bright. I could see right into the car window. Mind you, my art teacher was 29 at the time, fit and moderately attractive. Bosom was out for all to see. I was 14 in 9th grade. Probably one of the best days at school followed thereafter. I was in middle school and I was walking behind a girl in high school who was wearing a dress with no panties. The wind picked up when we got off the train and I thought I was the only one who noticed. She didn't even seem to care. Later, I found out that another boy saw it too and we're best friends to this day. I was at my friend's beach house when I was 16. He had a really hot sister that was about 20 at the time. We were watching TV in the living room and she comes in to hang out with us wearing a t-shirt and loose-fitting boy shorts. Looked more like boxers, to be honest. She sat near me and put her legs up in such a way that I had a marvelous view of her lady parts through the baggy leg of the shorts. I tried not to stare, but it was pretty cool when I was 16. The cheerleaders lived across the street from me in college. Every day, my roommate and I would sit on the front porch, have a smoke and wait for the cheerleaders to get home from practice. One would always change with her windows open, and we just sat and watched, thinking she never realized the curtains were open. Then one day, she waved to us and blew us a kiss. Cue the debate. Do we go over? What should we do? What if she just wants you and not me? What if she wants both of us? Former college cheerleader could have been anything. She could have wanted you to come over and do the deed, or she could have just liked showing off her body. Both are equally plausible, mainly because, at times, pulling tail was a game for us too. She probably knew people were watching and she liked it. I dated a girl who would have fun with herself in front of her windows so her neighbors could watch. That is truly disgusting. You should PM me her address so I know to avoid that area. Smoking hot girl going down a water slide. Her bikini top got caught and came off. She had a wonderful chest. My buddy once accidentally Snapchatted his nudes to me and our group of friends instead of his girlfriend. Handed the Verizon guy my phone to get it turned back on. Opened Safari, and the first thing that popped up was the best pic of my chest to date. We both just laughed it off. Been selling phones for like 10 years. Ran across accidental chest selfies more than a couple of times. It's usually never the kind you want to see. Also worked as a fireman/medic. See many there as well. But they're always like 70 plus years old, no good ones there either. Oh frick, this reminds me. When I was doing long distance with my ex, we'd send each other pictures au naturel. She requested pictures of my eggplant quite often. She really got off on those. Well, she selected her favorite picture of my wang and put this as my contact picture, even after I came back from living abroad. I knew it was a bad idea, as it would show every time I rang her. Of course, the upside was that she'd always be down for fun when I rang her. Well, one day at the family dinner table, she's telling everyone how she wants a new phone. Her mum, dad, and sister, and me were there. Her dad just looks up to me and says, "You reckon she'll install a different contact picture for you on her new phone?" Oh gosh, I would die if that were me. I should also note that yes, the vast majority of these stories are about women rather than men. Then again, since a larger proportion of male indecent exposure cases are received to much less positive responses for a myriad of complicated reasons, perhaps that's not surprising. I was in London and my sister and I got last-minute tickets to see Patrick Stewart in A Life in the Theatre. We had amazing seats, 3rd or 4th row centre. So at one point during the play, Patrick Stewart sits down on a folding chair right in the centre in front of us. He was wearing loose shorts, and his fricking balls were showing through the shorts. They were huge. It was glorious and incredibly awkward at the same time. The whole scene, he's just balls out. I still can't look at him without thinking, "Dude, I saw your balls." When I was in 3rd grade, we had a really pretty, red-headed student teacher. I can't remember her name, but I remember she was teaching us French for some reason. Apparently she spoke it really well. I'm not sure why that would be part of the 3rd grade experience. One day she came over to help me at my desk with something, and leaned on my desk and bent over. For whatever reason, she decided not to wear a bra that day, and right in front of my face, swinging in her dress, were the largest pair I'd seen up to that point. It was glorious. I truly believe that event changed me, and set the type of woman I've been into ever since. It was certainly a formative experience. At a party in high school, my best friend got hammered and passed out in the front lawn halfway through. I was hanging with my other buddy and his girlfriend, who was also hammered, when he decided to go and check on my best friend. He asked me to make sure his girlfriend didn't do anything stupid while he was gone. She flashed me. I failed him. You had one job, damn it. I was a freshman at Louisiana State University a few years ago, living in the all-male honor dorms. During the first couple of weeks at school, I'd made friends with a couple of girls who roomed together and were friends from the same high school. They had a third roommate because they had a corner dorm and it was huge. All-girls dorm, so I had to be signed in and out. But it was a spacious place to chill, big as it was. So one night, I'm in there with friends hanging out. It's around 7:30 or so. Dining hall just cleared out. So the dorm is packed with girls hanging out and watching TV. And also showering. The alarm goes off, panic ensues as people scramble out of the communal spaces and dorm rooms. And also out of the showers. Positioned as I was at the end of the hallway, because the dorm room we were in was in the corner, I saw 8 girls in various states of undress, wet and slippery, from half-dressed to completely starkers, running toward and from me. I'd been at university for a few weeks. I thought this was just the beginning. Nothing but this from here on out, boys. Didn't quite work out that way. But I'll never forget that one night it just so happened to. When I was 8 or 9, being driven by my mum somewhere and staring out the window, in the car right next to us at a light stop, this gorgeous blonde just casually takes off her shirt, removes her bra, then puts a new shirt on. My jaw was on the floor. Mum didn't even notice. I'll never forget it. Winning. I delivered pizza for 7 years. Reddit hardly existed when I finished that job, and while I knew some of the chests I saw were probably dares, that doesn't bother me. I knew it. Brazzers was right all along with the pizza guy gets laid a lot. Some people pay to see women's chests. You got paid to see women without tops on. Think about that. I think my best and worst accidental exposure is the same story. I was in my car with my now husband getting ready to leave the parking lot at Lowe's when we looked up and saw a couple trying to put a carpet on their car. First of all, they were trying to strap a 9x12 rug to the top of a retired police-issue Crown Vic, which was unusual enough. My husband wanted to see how they were going to pull this off, so we stayed in the car to watch the spectacle. They started to unroll the carpet, which is when the girl bent over in her short summer dress, sans underwear. So I'm 20 feet from a bare snatch in broad daylight in a hardware store parking lot. It was gynecological. To quote Future, she was butthole undressed. Only my windshield stood between her birth canal and the two of us. I think both of us simultaneously yelped with surprise when it happened, at which point my husband remarked, "I can see the bottom of her brain from here." I was dating a twin for a short period of time. They still lived with their parents and shared a bedroom. My twin was taking a shower, so I was just chilling in the living room. The parents were out of town for the weekend, so the twins and I had the house to ourselves. The boyfriend of the other twin would come over at a later point that night, but wasn't there yet. After finishing a show on TV, I walked upstairs to go see if she was finished showering. When I walked into the bedroom, I saw her, naked as the day she was born, and I approached her from behind. I cupped her fun things, big ones, and smelled her wet hair and was about to tell her how nice it smelled when she said, wrong twin. Out of shock, we both stayed like that for 2 or 3 seconds, then I backed off and asked her, "Never happened?" She agreed, and we've never told my twin. Well, that was almost 10 years ago, and we were only dating for a couple of months, so by now she must have told her, I guess.
Reddit, what's something your family doesn't know about you? I just get in my car and drive. I never really have a destination. I just need to leave. I've done it ever since I had access to cars. My mom will ask why I have a sleeping bag in my car, and I'll just lie because I don't want the hassle. Edit, I know this is a do what I say and not what I do situation, but if you do this or want to do this, please tell someone. Stay in some sort of contact. I don't like cheese. Seriously, Mom, you have the memory of a goldfish. I'm 18 and I bought my first scratch-off and won $10,000. I put it in savings and parents don't know I have it. The week after graduation from high school, I tried to hang myself in the basement, but the rope broke. I wasn't going to college and I didn't see a bright future ahead. That was 5 years ago as of this past Friday. Right now, the world seems very dark still, but I'm trying hard and I'm fighting every day to keep moving forward. I'm studying graphic design every day, haven't touched games for months, yet they think I'm playing video games when I'm working on my computer. Dad, I'm not actually that incompetent. You breathing down my neck when I'm cooking/driving freaks me out. Also, I haven't been a virgin for years. Where I live, what my phone number is, or whether I am even alive. I'm actually so sad there's no story for this, but I imagine some serious crap must have went down in order for that to happen. That I'm infertile. They are waiting for babies, but they won't be coming. Hey, same here, guy. But I told my parents almost immediately, and they were very supportive. Tough break. Good luck on your journey, and hope you have someone you can talk to. Feel free to vent if you ever need to. I got suspended from school because I used to skip lessons all the time. Weirdest punishment ever. My mom knew and didn't want to tell my dad as she knew he'd be disappointed, so she told me to work hard and get back on track. My dad left for work earlier than I went to school and got home after school finished, so I would just lie and pretend I was at school all day. I'm nearly 30 now, and he still doesn't know. I faked a job offer so I could move to another city that is 3,000 miles from them. The reason I faked the job offer is because I still want to maintain a relationship with my family, regardless of how controlling and oppressive they are. I got an actual interview, did everything, but was not chosen. Instead of telling them that, I made fake contracts, an offer letter, and I showed it to them. Since the documents are in English and my parents can't understand, they just ask me questions and things, so lying is much easier. I just pack my suitcase, live off couch surfing, work a temp job for money and food for a while. It's hard, very tiring and financially unstable at first, but now I have a job, peace, and much more confidence in voicing my opinions and feelings. I am also slowly mending my relationship with my parents. Soon. That I'm a retired multimillionaire at 39 years old. They just think I'm a freelancer who travels a lot. It's for the best, I think. I hate my sister. She is self-absorbed and attention-seeking. She starts conflicts and is proud for standing up for herself. Girl, you wouldn't be in that situation if you didn't start it. She's always the victim. My parents' sister and brother walked on eggshells around her just so she wouldn't flip out. I did for the longest time until I got tired of her. I was labeled the jerk for setting her off. Edit, my sister has seen several different therapists and has not been diagnosed as bipolar or with a personality disorder. She has had one therapist tell her to go elsewhere because she is too confrontational. Me saying that I was labeled the jerk was more of the way I felt. Nobody actually called me the jerk. I was the one that was told to bite my tongue. That I'm badly depressed all the time, except when I visit them. Going back home is just so comforting, and to know that it's always my home, no matter where I am. I seriously dread the day I lose this. It's one of my biggest fears. It can help to open up about it, especially with those you love and feel comfortable around. A year ago, I was drowning in debt, and my depression had sunken to the lowest it had ever been. The only thing I could feel was a general numbness, and every other thought was about ending my life. I was seriously considering going off into the desert and doing it. I was too proud to tell anyone my problems, and I didn't want to burden anyone, so I kept it to myself. My dad picked up on some of my issues and offered to have me come home and live there while he pays for a bankruptcy for me and to get my head straight. I wasn't going to do it because of my before-mentioned pride, but I was considering ending my life instead. It struck me how dumb that was at work the next day, where I broke down in tears and quit. I called my dad the same day and told him I wanted help. He flew out and helped me move back across the country and did everything he promised he would. I have no doubt in my mind that I would be dead right now if I didn't get that help from my family. My advice, don't let it simmer that long. Reach out for the help that is likely to be right there for you. It sounds like they would understand, and if not understand, at least offer you help. Don't fight that pit of numb darkness on your own. Let those you love and trust help support you. It makes a world of difference, even if it doesn't quite feel like it at the time. I understand Ukrainian, and I know they talk about how I should have been aborted or given away. I have a huge tattoo on my forearm that I've had for the last 10 years. I'm currently getting it removed with the laser, but I've been using long sleeves whenever I get together with the family. My family is extremely conservative. Freaking annoying in the summer. That I'm a millionaire. I'm super frugal and don't show it. But every time I make a big purchase, they raise an eyebrow. Hey, you don't need to keep it a secret that you're subscribed to Am I the Genius or Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. They're both worth subscribing to, so go ahead. And remember to turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. I used to have a crippling opiate addiction and contemplated ending my life numerous times, but was able to detox and get myself clean cold turkey all without them even knowing I had the problem. I've since had a conversation with my dad about it. He thought I had just decided to move away from my home because of a better job, when in reality, it was to separate myself from all of my old connects. I actually took a pay cut at the new job. Anywho, 2 years later, I'm doing better than ever. However, I have stayed out of town for obvious reasons. Edit, I wasn't going to edit this because of the cliche thanks for the gold stranger edits I see all day, but there are too many to reply to individually. Those of you congratulating me, thank you. Those of you struggling with the problem yourselves, please find someone to talk to. Heck, message me and I'll help with as much advice as I can. Also, I didn't do it 100% on my own. I had my wife and my young children with me as well to motivate me. I can't recommend Kratom enough for people either. At the time I was kicking opiates, Arkansas banned Kratom sales, so I wasn't able to get it, but a few months down the road when I finally went to a different state altogether for a way better job, Kratom is what helped me say no to people that had H or pills. It also helped my father-in-law get off of a long-time pain management script that was destroying his body. They don't know that I'm their least favorite child. They also don't know just how much their opinion of me still matters to me. I've kept a diary for the last 23 years, including a great deal of detail about them, both good and bad. Some very bad, bordering on criminal. My sister is the executrix of my will. Should be interesting after I die. I love them more than I show them. I can't show love to anyone in my family for some reason. They probably think I don't care about them, but I do, and one day, I'll tell them. Edit, thanks to everybody who gave me their advice or just took their time to talk about their lives and experiences. I won't respond to everyone because of limited time, but I truly appreciate all of your comments. I, male 20, come from a family of 4, 3 sisters, 13, 26, 28. I never could show any affection to them for some reason. I never in my life told my parents or sisters that I love them, except for my little sister. I will definitely change that as soon as I finish work today. Life is not guaranteed, and I want to open myself to them before it's too late. Thank you again, everybody. That means a lot to me. If I have anything to say to repay the favor you did to me, you all should start or continue being true to you. Being genuine is the best thing you can do to improve your life. Love y'all. Cheesiness aside, it really is a shame that men aren't allowed to express affection. The rules of society basically dictate that if you're a man who shows affection, you're seen as weak or vulnerable. And it's not just affection either. It's emotions in general. In reality, most men don't know how to deal with, recognize, or regulate their emotions, and that's partly because of the stigma. It's seen as emasculating or feminizing, which the perception of femininity as negative is a problem in and of itself, but that's another conversation. In short, if you as a man keep all of your emotions locked away, they're going to either get bottled up and explode or be lost entirely when you need them the most. That I crashed a car on purpose to get out of work 3 years ago. Being bullied at work and couldn't face going back. So I crashed my car, slowly, into a tree so I could have several months off while I recovered. Didn't do it to hurt myself or end my life. I have severe anxiety, and work made it 1,000 times worse. Yes, I know it was stupid, and yes, I know I could have done a million other things, but I needed a way out instantly. Edit. Didn't claim on insurance, but got full sick pay for 6 months, and on the day it ran out, I quit. Also, went to psychotherapy as I was a tad worried I would do it again in the future, for diagnosed with Asperger's and severe anxiety. This was the UK, so no health insurance. It's government/tax funded, so it wasn't fraud. I did feel guilty I wasted NHS's time, but not anything else. Wanted to share a positive story. I am getting married in October. After my grandmother and my mother and father died, I separated myself from my cousins, aunts, uncles, surviving grandparents because our family was so toxic. In that 4 years, I fell in love, developed a new family, and have been quite successful. You never know who is dragging you down. And before anyone asks, I made multiple attempts to rekindle relationships with my family, but it's a two-way street that no one else was driving on apparently. My parents divorced in 2000, but were on and off after that. My mom and dad died 3 years apart, and because of his drunken ways and random knocks on the door, I was relieved, and I wasn't invited to the funeral or included in the obituary. I still have a little darkness from it, but there is so much light now that it drowns it out pretty well. I still have moments with my fiance when I'll get upset because something triggers me, but we talk about it and move on. I have garnered a pretty big following as a fanfic writer, and thus writing fanfic is actually the most successful thing I've accomplished in my life thus far. Edit, holy crabola guys, this just blew up in my face. Wow, this is what it feels like when you accidentally write a popular fanfiction. What just happened? Well, I'm going to try to address some frequently asked questions and state some things here. First off, so many soulmates, so many fellow fanfic writers. Hello there, hey! I have no one specific fandom, though the popular fanfic I am talking about is a fanfic called Second Chance, A New Choice, which is a Harry Potter fic posted 10 years ago and is still getting daily favorites to this day. I don't know why, don't ask me. Due to the popularity of the thing, I've even teamed up with the real editor and is currently reworking the entire thing. My fanfiction account is called Moonbird, which is my 10-year-old account where I just post any old crap. My archive of our own account is called Moonybird. It is pretty new, and I only post stuff there which I myself consider my best works. Yes, I have started to write stuff that isn't fanfiction. I am, however, very happy and grateful for my time as a fanfic writer, and it has taught me so much when it comes to writing in general, and I still write fanfiction. Heck, I'm in the middle of writing a Loki-centered MCU fanfic. No, I don't earn money on it. Not a single dime. I do it for fun. It's my hobby. That most of them are just people to me. I don't feel any obligation to love them, but a bunch of them are fun to be around, and I consider them friends. Love is too strong a word though. I feel far stronger attachments to my friends, who I've nurtured relationships with for decades because we have lots of things in common that aren't as arbitrary or invisible as DNA. Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree here, at least to the extent that it feels like an obligation. Every single family event I've had, it just feels like that I'm there because I have to be. And it's not because I really want anybody to be there. Like, don't get me wrong, I still love my family and I wouldn't just leave them, but I hardly find myself making new memories with them. That's why I value my friendships online so much. They just feel closer and I feel like I know them more than my family. And for that matter, my friends know me more than my own family does. I'm not lazy. I'm just severely depressed and have PTSD that makes my everyday life a struggle. I try to behave and do as I'm told, but half the time, I don't even see a point in staying alive. I'm sorry I'm not the perfect child you wanted me to be. How much debt I'm in. My mom probably has an idea, but student loans aren't a joke. I'm going to school for cyber forensics and will be graduating this year. However, I have only recently realized that, while I am good at networking and technology, my 2 years actually working in the field has shown me that it does not make me happy whatsoever, and it actually makes me miserable. I'm an expert in IT, networking, and security. However, I hate doing it. I've realized recently that acting is what makes me happy, and I want to pursue that despite being deep in debt for a major in cyber forensics. Back when I was in high school, I did several background acting jobs for movies and commercials, and this summer have gotten back into it, and recently just did a background acting job for an upcoming Netflix series releasing next year, and it's made me realize that that is what makes me happy and gives me personal satisfaction. Acting. You do something new every single day. You meet new people and make new connections and friends every single day, and you get to be part of something amazing, and I can see myself making a living off of acting. My family doesn't know that my major and job experience and what I am skilled in actually makes me miserable, and doing something as stupid as acting, even if it's just background acting and acting in student films, makes me happy, and that I regret not going to school for film. But once I am graduated, I am going to keep pursuing acting jobs and see where it lands me. Even things as small as background acting makes me so happy, and I love it. My mom thinks that after I graduate that I plan on going for my master's in this field, but I know that it'll only give me more debt for something that I have absolutely no interest anymore in getting to. I don't know how to tell her that I decided not to go for my master's. TLDR, the field I am majoring in and have years of experience in makes me miserable, and I want to throw it all away for acting. My entire family is proud of me for going into a major that makes a ton of money and that I've built a successful career already in said field, but it's made me miserable. Money is awesome, but at what cost when you're miserable every day? They don't know the actual amount of difficulties that I had going through my life with undiagnosed ADHD. I got diagnosed at 28 after having essentially my third mental breakdown because of the huge amount of pressure and disgust I put onto myself for failing to do even the simplest things. I told my parents and they were devastated, not because I had ADHD, but because they never knew or suspected. And honestly, looking from the outside, it was impossible to see. I was valedictorian, graduated college magna cum laude, participated in tons of activities, seemed to have friends, etc. But I was so broken and only did those things because of deep shame that resulted in an almost attempt at my own life that my body saved me from. It's hard to allow yourself to die from exposure. I was hoping to make it look like an accident, but after my body said, nope, not gonna happen, I realized I really needed professional help. I'm doing much better now, but I know my parents wouldn't handle that well. I cried every night for years. I'm 21 and never had a date or any kind of romantic contact to a girl. Everybody thinks I'm a super funny and confident person, but they don't know that I suffer. Well, that actually changed some weeks ago. I met a girl and had my first kiss, and I'm going on a date next Saturday. That the divorce I'm going through is a lot harder on me than I'm letting on. I wanted the divorce. No one in my family liked my ex, and they are happy I'm getting away. But the divorce has been dragging on for 2 years now and is really taking its toll on me. The first year things were fine and my family saw that I was a lot happier. But it is dragging on to the second year because my ex is refusing to cooperate and is trying to manipulate the system. I am at risk at losing time with my kids and losing half of my life savings and having to pay 50% of my paycheck in child support for the next 15 years. Note, my ex makes more than me, which is the most frustrating part. She has no problem supporting herself. She talks crap about me to my kids, but I am trying to take the high road and ignore it. It is depressing realizing I have to deal with her for 15 plus years. A big reason my family doesn't know I'm struggling is because they haven't been there for me. My mom has had some health issues and can't travel. My dad was supposed to come out for Father's Day, but changed his plans. Because my daughter had a recital on Father's Day, I had to spend time with my ex's family on Father's Day. I live close to my brother, but he makes no effort to plan events with my kids. We were even supposed to have a joint birthday party for our kids because they're a couple weeks apart, and he straight up forgot, promised to, quote, make up for it, but has not reached out since. I made Dean's List for my last semester in college. I'm super proud of it, but I found it out when we were celebrating my little sister's graduation, and I didn't want to take it away from her. I also didn't want to feel like I was rubbing it in my twin's face. She apparently feels threatened that I graduated a year early, even though she's always been much more academically successful than me. Back when I was 24, I took about $300 in cash with me to a trip to Vegas with my grandma. She is well off and didn't want to go alone. She has a timeshare with a company that lets her pick and choose where she would like to go for 3 weeks each year. Her friend backed out due to illness, and she decided to invite me. We have a wonderful relationship, but when it comes to money, we don't really discuss it. Way too long a story. One night, I tell her I'd just like to go wander the strip alone. She's fine with this, as I come off a bit intimidating. 6 foot, 235 pounds at the time, long hair, kind of a biker/metalhead vibe. I ended up at the Luxor playing Texas Hold'em. I went from $250 to $30,000 in about 4 hours of play across 4 different tables. I invested that money in the stock market, and if I cashed out said stocks right now, I would have about $2.4 million. No one in my family has a clue. I live extremely humble. For some reason, I feel like they would all come at me for loans and such. I just don't want to deal with that.
How have you traumatized your parents? Here's my story. It begins far away from my parents, deep in the woods. I was 18 years old. As summer came to a close, I went on a week-long hiking trip with my girlfriend. We went off the grid, many miles from civilization. There were no designated campsites, running water, etc. We were roughing it. Being young and randy, we wanted to have our share of fun adult times. So I bought a sizable stash of prophylactics. Of course, there were no garbage cans in the middle of the woods. When the deed was done, I had to put the used wang covers into a Ziploc baggie in my backpack. By the end of our week in the sweltering August sun, the baggie was full and funky. The trip went well. I returned to my parents' house exactly 1 day before I had to leave for my sophomore year at college. I was also a ridiculous slob. So, using my patented packing style, I hastily dumped my backpack's contents into my bedroom closet, picked through the mess, took what I needed, and left the rest. Yeah, I forgot about the baggie. But someone else found it. No, not my parents. My dog. Basically, my parents came home one day to find used prophylactics spread all over the living room. Yeah. Apparently my dog had found the baggie, but he didn't just sniff it or eat it on the spot or whatever. No, he took it downstairs and spread my week-old rubbers and splooge all over the couch and carpet in the living room. The first room you see when you enter the house. Welcome home, Mum and Dad. They didn't tell me about it for years to spare me the embarrassment. When my dad finally did tell me, he was laughing his butt off. But my mother was apparently not pleased. In conclusion, my childhood dog spread my used rubbers all over my parents' living room. When I was in 8th grade, I was staying the night at my friend's house, and it so happened that one of my favorite movies, A Christmas Story, was going to be playing on TBS. My family didn't have cable, and I knew everyone would enjoy watching it on Christmas at my house, so I asked my buddy if we could record it onto VHS so I could take it home. He grabbed a blank tape from his dad's office, popped it in the VCR, and we recorded Ralphie and his Christmas shenanigans. The following day, I went home and told my parents and siblings that I had a copy of the movie. They were ecstatic, and we all agreed to watch it the following week on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve rolls around, and my parents, brothers, about 5 and 8 years old, sister, 7 years old, and myself gather around the TV to watch the movie. I rewind the tape to the beginning and press play. For the next 3 seconds, although it felt like an hour, my entire family and I watched a woman sucking a large male organ before it quickly cut to A Christmas Story. We'd obviously taped over one of my friend's dad's adult flick tapes. Nobody flinched. I looked at my parents, who had these bizarre frozen smiles as if nothing had happened, and everything was right with the world. My brother and sister continued watching the TV but had looks of bewilderment on their faces as they tried to process what they'd seen while simultaneously trying to enjoy the beginnings of A Christmas Story. Nobody in my family has ever mentioned this event. I'm 30 years old now, and A Christmas Story is no longer part of our family Christmas tradition. Oh sweet lord, we've missed out on many great awkward family moments now that the age of the cassette tape has been and gone. We shall miss you, old faithful. When I was 15, I was just constantly in the mood all the time. I'd also never seen a male member other than my own or in an adult flick. These two things are important. So I have my group of friends, and one of my friends, who we'll call D, had older, cooler brothers. So they would get us adult flicks and we would trade with each other every so often. After a while, I had a collection of about 8 or 9 skin flicks, all VHS, hidden in a garment bag which contained a suit I never wore in my closet. I also had acquired a male enlarging pump. I know, laugh it up. Honestly, I thought it was small by comparison, but it was the kind that has a long cylinder and squeeze pump. This was also hidden in the garment bag along with rubbers and cigars. I just knew it was a genius hiding spot. Incorrecto. Come home from school one day with everything that was in the garment bag on the kitchen counter. Super busted, and my mum is freaking the frick out over the enlarging pump. It was like she'd found a severed head or something. She was mortified. She yells at me and says, "Wait till I tell your dad," and sends me up to my room. My dad comes home. I hear them talking, then I hear him ascending the stairs. I'm terrified. He opens the door with the biggest grin on his face, tells me not to worry about it, gives me my rubbers back, but says we have to throw the tapes and pump away. But he put them in a bag and put them on top of the garbage so I could retrieve them, and told me it was nothing, that I was a teenage boy and that my mum would never understand. My mum thought I was the devil, though. When we were about 5 or 7 years old, me and my brother discovered the similarities between ketchup and blood. Mum wasn't home yet, so we got some knives from the kitchen, all the ketchup we could find, cut some holes in our shirts for the knives, and staged a huge crime scene in the living room. We loved secretly watching the thrillers our parents used to see in the evenings from the living room door when we were believed to be in our beds, so we had some experience with a plausible scenario and put a lot of thought into it, creating a huge battle scene with blood on the walls, the couches, and of course, lots of ketchup on our motionless bodies in the center of the room. Mum kind of had a breakdown. You were a fricked up child. So when I was 16, I found out that who I thought was my dad was actually just my stepdad and not my real dad. Well, a sister I never knew about contacted me, and it turns out my real dad lived in a small town just 8 miles away from mine. Well, I met my sister and had her come over one day while my mum was at work. My mum came home early, and when I introduced my sister, I introduced her as my girlfriend. The look on my mum's face was priceless. That is beautifully evil. I was around 14 and was pretty depressed, so my parents were on guard. One day I woke up early with a runny nose, but being tired, I just went back to sleep. A few hours later, my mum is panicking as she wakes me up. My face was covered in blood due to a bloody nose, and I looked like a corpse. I sneezed when I had a bloody nose once during the night, so there was blood splattered on my wall and pillow with blood all over at noon, while I was sleeping pretty heavily when my mum came to wake me up. I woke up because of the loud screaming going on in my room and scared the entire family by accident. When I was about 8 years old, I was going through our medicine cabinet like the little rascal I was and found one of my brother's old EpiPens, the epinephrine injector for use during a severe allergic reaction. I was curious about how it worked and figured it was like any other pin in that you clicked the top of your thumb and the needle came out the other end. Turns out the needle comes out of the end that you click, and it ended up going right into my thumb. When my parents came upon me screaming my lungs out in the bathroom, the walls were painted with blood that I'd sprayed around getting the pen out of my thumb. Apparently, it was pretty grisly. Haha, my brother did exactly the same thing with my EpiPen when he was like 11-ish, in the middle of a church service. The image of a screaming child spraying blood all over the congregation is just too gosh darn funny. I love it. I was young enough that I took supervised baths. My mum stepped out of the bathroom for just a few seconds, and I thought it would be super funny to sink to the bottom and lie motionless. Mum didn't think it was nearly as funny when she came back in. Similarly, I was young enough to take supervised baths and was exhausted at the time. My mum stepped out and I instantly fell asleep, with my face in the water. I was dreaming and I knew it was hard to breathe. My mum came in screaming my name and my head shot up, slamming into the faucet. I was fine, but she put me to bed instantly. To this day, we don't know why, but toddler me decided one night to get out of bed, grab my toy hammer, walk to my parents' room, round the bed, and smack my sleeping dad in the face before dropping the hammer and returning to bed. He's still jumpy in his sleep. I fell out of a moving car when I was 6. Luckily, I was in a car seat and landed in grass. How does this happen? One word: Jeeps. For some context, when I was about 7, I lost my cat. He just disappeared one day. Probably coyotes. But his favorite thing to do was sleep in my mum's bathroom sink. Also, my neighborhood is infested with cats because someone down the street never got hers fixed. So now for the real story. I was swinging on my porch swing, looking over into the bushes and saw a cat. It was laying down, eyes closed, mouth open. No wounds as far as I could see. It looked asleep. But it looked sick too, so to make it feel better, I picked the dead cat up, took it inside and placed it in the bathroom sink. Plus, I was feeling really lonely after my first cat disappeared. I thought my mum would let me keep this one. In conclusion, my mum walked in on me petting a dead cat I'd placed in the bathroom sink. I find this morbidly adorable. A child with little understanding of the concept of death attempting to tend to an animal's corpse. I think that definitely would have left a mark on me as a parent, though. I think that I'd be more moved than traumatized. My mum got my sister and I our first set of makeup when we were 11 and 15 respectively. We ran to the bathrooms to try and figure it out and immediately decided that the best course of action was to paint bruises and wounds all over our faces, fake fight sounds and screaming, then run to our mother's office area appearing like we needed to go to the hospital. It worked. She turned about as white as a sheet and screamed before we collapsed into laughter. We weren't allowed to have makeup again until we were adults and bought it for ourselves. I haven't, but my little sister used to hold her breath when she threw a fit, used to scare my mum to death. My dad said, she'll start breathing when she passes out. My daughter threatened me with this. I looked at her with a bored look until she went down. I didn't catch her or anything. She came to and realized Daddy wasn't being bullied. The first movie I saw with my ex was Knocked Up. At the time there was awkwardness because we'd accidentally had unprotected fun the week before. It turned into a big joke between us and I bought her the movie for Christmas. Mum asked me, "What did you get Jen for Christmas?" And without hesitating or thinking, I said, "Knocked Up." She was driving and almost wrecked the car. This happened the summer after my senior year of high school. After a long night of drinking, I came home and apparently felt the desire to spew. My parents live on the 3rd floor. I live on the 2nd and have a bathroom on my floor. For some reason, I turned the fan on when I went into the bathroom, which is kind of loud, and my parents' room is pretty much right above the bathroom. So I spewed hard, mostly in the toilet at first. I got hot and really sweaty when I'm spewing, so naturally I stripped down to my boxers. I then somehow managed to spew all over myself. Well, that's unacceptable to drunk me, so I decided to take a shower to clean up. Never managed to turn the water on. Next thing I know, I'm getting woken up by my mother screaming bloody murder, crying profusely. Apparently, I passed out in the tub. The fan woke up my mother in the middle of the night, so she came to investigate and found me barely dressed, covered in my own spew, passed out in the bathtub with, as she says, my eyes rolling in the back of my head. She thought I was dead. I would say that was a bit traumatizing for her. In conclusion, my mum found me passed out, covered in my own spew in the bathtub and thought I was dead. I should note for our listeners that even saying the more commonly accepted and medically correct terms for spew can get us in trouble with YouTube, which is why I had to say spew so many times instead. Spew. When I was in kindergarten, I made a friend while at school. We really hit it off, and she said she had a big bag of Halloween candy at home and offered to share it with me. It was a fairly short walk to her place from school, and from her place a short little walk home. So I head over to her place and completely forget to tell my parents where I went after school. I completely lose track of time. We ate candy and played video games. Her family must have thought my parents knew where I was. We played board games and ate dinner, and I didn't go home until after 9. I remember getting home, walking through the front door and being greeted by the sight of my parents, both completely in tears on the phone with the police. I immediately realized what I did wrong, and I thought for sure I was going to be grounded forever. They weren't mad though, they were just overjoyed that I was okay. A bunch of bear hugs and tear-filled expressions of parental affection later, I felt terrible. They must have thought I was dead. I was missing for over 6 hours. Every single one of their friends was out looking for me. I'm such a butthole. In conclusion, when I was in kindergarten, I disappeared for over 6 hours on my way home from school and didn't tell anyone where I was, so I could play video games and eat candy. When I was younger, my parents took one of my toys away from me, a brand new mother-fricking Hulk toy. This made toddler me angry, so I did the only thing to do. I crapped in their room. I crapped all over their bed and floor. I reminded my mum about it, and she said I didn't just crap, but diarrheaed. I sprayed diarrhea all over my parents' bedroom. When I was young, maybe around 5 or 6, I was trying to find Christmas presents in closets or under beds, but instead I found a crapload of prophylactics and adult fun time toys. At the time, I didn't know what they were, so I opened up the box of what I thought were balloons and started to run down the stairs with what I thought was a sword, or a vibrating toy, and trying to blow up the balloons. I then ran into the room where my parents were and started talking about how I finally found my Christmas presents. My parents still talk about that today. After being blown for the first time, I rushed home to tell my best friend in the world. I got on Facebook and told him every dirty detail. I then left my Facebook open when I went to shower. My mom, just arriving home, went to check her email and learned about my new adult adventures. My mum is the kind of person who doesn't believe children or teenagers should be allowed any privacy whatsoever, for their own good. I was really dumb and used to log all of my AIM convos, because who would want to read every single line hoping to find something salacious? Well, my mum, I guess, because she did, and buried in an AIM log was me telling someone that I really loved going down on him and couldn't wait to do it again. But she didn't tell me she read it, she told everyone else in my family, my siblings, my aunts, all of them, and all of her friends. She's a gossip and she lives on that crap. So everyone but me knew she'd found this, as well as some exposed photos a guy had sent me. Instead, she just carted me off to confession, bought me one of those Bibles for teens, and told me I needed to get right with Jesus. It wasn't until years later I discovered the depths of her invasion of privacy. Oh well. My dad was fixing this huge closet one day. The closet was very old and had an extremely heavy door. The problem with that closet was that the door hinges were loose. At that time I was about 8 or 9 years old and my little sister was fooling around inside the closet while my dad was trying to tighten the hinges. He told me to get her out of there since she was just bothering him, and as I lifted up, the gosh darn closet door fell down on my pinky toe. It's all a blur, but I clearly remember me running down the hallway screaming my heart out while my sock got pumped with blood. After that, I passed out, waking up a while later in the back seat of my father's car with a crap load of toilet paper around my foot. My dad didn't say a word. When I arrived at the hospital, I got put under and operated. Fortunately, they managed to put my pinky toe back where it belonged. I'm guessing my dad felt very shameful after the incident. However, Mum told me a couple of years ago that after I lost my toe, he immediately put it inside his mouth because he'd read that that was the only way to save the toe from dying or something like that, and drove to the hospital with the toe in his mouth. I don't think he'll forget that. Ugh, this one makes me cringe just thinking about it. When I was 13, I was about as randy as you would expect a 13-year-old kid to be. The problem was, I was living in a very religious household at the time. My parents go through phases. This was their religious phase. Luckily for me, it was while I was going through puberty. And my parents had an ironclad parental filter on the internet, so adult flicks were out of the question. So I decided to draw my own adult material. And I'm a pretty gosh darn good artist when it comes to drawing things that are right in front of me to look at. So what I'd do is I'd take magazine pictures of women who had relatively little clothing on and just edit out the clothing I was drawing. Well, of course, my parents found my stack of drawings eventually, which isn't too bad, I guess. My dad even said uncomfortably that I had some talent at drawing and should pursue it, just with a different subject matter. Here's the part that makes me cringe. My mother decided that one of the drawings looked too much like her. It was purely coincidental. It was literally a picture out of an advertisement that I had copied to the best of my ability. And she asked me, very uncomfortably, if I fantasized about her. Ladies and gentlemen, not much in the world makes you want to crawl into a hole and die more than when your own mother thinks you've been fantasizing about her. And I have cringed so far into my office chair that I'm in danger of becoming the world's worst transformer. Oh gosh, please God no, I want this story to be fake. You know how your parents told you to never run with scissors? Well, I didn't listen. I was running through the house like an idiot and I tripped on the scissors and they went through my front teeth and jammed in the back of my throat. Blood sprayed out of my mouth and my nose. It frightened my parents so much that my mum passed out, and when she fell, her face was smashed on the floor. So I had to get 3 stitches, and my mum had $30,000 worth of face surgery, so I figuratively and literally traumatized my parents. One time during my sophomore year in college, I'd been feeling guilty for not seeing my family very often, even though they lived 20 minutes away, so I decided to take them out for dinner. Since I had some extra cash, I thought it would be nice to take them somewhere better, so we all went to Black Angus. I thought it would be cool to bring my boyfriend that I'd been dating seriously for 6 months. No one in my family normally does this. I found out later that my dad was scared crapless that I was going to tell the family that I was either pregnant or getting married at the dinner. Well, crap. When I was 2 or 3, my parents had me in the backyard. I was running around and generally being a small child. You know how it is. Apparently, I saw something cool on the ground, and like most children, my first reaction was to put this fancy thing in my mouth. The fancy thing was bird crap. My mom screamed and took a hose to my mouth. Bonus, I'm a huge misophobe now. I call it Stunt Baby. My 4-month-old standing on my hand as I balance him and let people take pictures. I hated school in 4th grade. Terrible teacher, a few bratty other students, made going to school miserable. So I loved any excuse to get out of school for all or even part of the day, even if it was a doctor's appointment. One day, for some reason, my doctor's appointment was cancelled, I was having none of this. I barricaded myself in my bedroom, no lock on the door, just my desk chair, and some other stuffed animals as a blockade, and screamed that I would rather die than go to school. My mum was freaked out, crying hysterically and everything. My poor dad having to deal with 2 hysterical women or girls at once. The next day, I had an emergency session with mum's therapist. I traumatized my mother once, both times when I was about 3 years old. The first time we were walking through the Botanic Gardens and there was a wedding taking place. Apparently the bride was a large lady, and I piped up in my piercing little voice, "Mummy, look at that fat bride!" My mother grabbed me under one arm and ran away. She thinks the bride didn't hear, but she's certain some of the guests did. The second time I traumatized her, she took me to her work one day, and I met one of her colleagues. He was from Ghana and had very dark skin. Apparently I said, "Mummy, look at that dirty man." Mum said she just wanted the floor to swallow her up, but the guy handled it with exceptional grace and just laughed and said, "Don't worry, at least I can't blush." Yeah, I'm surprised I wasn't left at an orphanage after those 2 episodes. I now have kids of my own who are determined to give me my comeuppance. When my mum was dropping me off at preschool, I saw the father of a girl in my class who was black. I tugged on his shirt and asked him, "Excuse me, sir, are you Susie's dad?" "I sure am, why?" At this point, my mother was terrified to know what my next statement would be. "You have the same dark skin as she does." My mum was about to die until he responded, "Yeah, it runs in my family," while laughing. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.